Hey, hey, hey. So, first up, just like that, we are back to thermals and jumpers. So that we had a nice little bit of, let me just move that. So we had a nice little bit of weather that was, friendly, and then all gone. So, enough about me and English weather. I'm like, to my email list, I had to kind of stop myself talking about the weather. And I kind of like call myself like the world shittest weatherman, because all I do is like a bitch about the weather after the fact. So by the time they get my email, it's like the day after, and I'm like, yeah, okay, like you all needed like nobody needs the weather after the fact, right? So just put my phone on silent. Okay, coke. So I had wanted to kind of get prepped for Henry Nowak. I think that's how you say his name. While like before the call. Sorry, I forgot to fill my water up. I'm a bit discombobulated because I had a bit too much fun using Grok Imagine earlier, which will be useful. It will be useful, but that kind of derailed my plans for how kind of organised I was in the end for the show even. So we'll do kind of Henry live, and I haven't really looked into the case actually. Now saying that, I did hear about it, as it happened, rather than and I was very confused as to why everybody's talking about it now. And obviously it's because of the trial, but I couldn't understand why people weren't talking about it when it was like when it was happening. I don't understand. Like, it's so sometimes you kind of see something in the news, you're like, wait a minute, haven't we already done this? But actually, and I don't just mean like George Floyd done it, but I mean actually, like, wait a minute, we already know about this case, don't we? So and obviously it's gone around the world, so it's definitely something dodgy is happening, in my opinion, with why it's being kind of like pushed like crazy right now, especially off the back of the case, the Manchester case, where they got off with taking a sledgehammer. Not the Manchester case, the protesters got off with taking a sledgehammer to the police officer. That was the break-in, was it? Oh, I don't know. Too many to remember. I think too many psyops going on at the same time. And just remember, psyop doesn't mean like there's no victims. It can mean that they just kind of like capitalized on things. And that's going to make so much sense when we talk about Chernobyl today. Chernobyl and Fukushima and the climate scam. So first up, we'll kind of dive into Chernobyl, Fukushima, how we ended up with net zero zealots. And then we will kind of do Henry together, using the analyzer, throwing information first in creative mode, uploading any profiles that we need, and then we'll kind of run the judgment matrix and see what it says with regards to it being kind of orchestrated after the fact, not necessarily. I think this is where we do have to be careful. The people go like one way, saying, "Oh, well, it's all fake. It never happened. It's all made up." Or that he was a plant, he's not really dead. That happens too. And the Apollo 11 stuff is a bit dodgy. The Titanic stuff is a bit dodgy. If you ever look at the original reporting, that like they didn't sink, everybody was saved, and then like a week and a half later everybody died, right? It's really strange if you look back at the original reporting of the Titanic. And then they tried to say, well, it's just because people were confused back then. It's like, really people were so confused about it sinking, but obviously they then had to say everybody sank, everybody died, because otherwise people would start looking into the actual specific people who died, and then that's the link with the Federal Reserve and all of that stuff. But Really interesting. So we do have to be careful that sometimes people will say that things just, people on the extreme end, it never happened, it's all made up. On the kind of slightly less extreme end, but still a bit odd, everybody was in on it. Like, that's really difficult, right? Really difficult to get everybody in on something. However, doesn't mean there aren't some bad actors kind of just nudging things, right? I think that's what happens most of the time is they have an end goal in mind. We know what their end goal is. Those are those 7 plans, of which we do have to be mindful that climate and earthquakes and tsunamis and that type of kind of like Operation Popeye weather is one, and that will kind of lead into what we're going to talk about with Chernobyl and Fukushima. That is one of their 7 plans of how to bring about like complete annihilation and control of the earth, right? Whatever it is their end goal is. And nuclear kind of fits into it. So nuclear and weather is on there. So both are on there. And then, so they will kind of nudge things. Sometimes they will start things. Sometimes they will plant stuff, So what will they kind of like purposely start, right? I don't know, like a lab leak, right? A lab leak could be like the plague diseasey stuff is really easy for them to just like trigger event. Other stuff perhaps not so much, because it may take lots more people involvement. So the more people involved, the harder it is to orchestrate, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it's not. What am I trying to say? Harder it is to orchestrate, but it doesn't mean you can't kind of jump on the bandwagon and then kind of manipulate things. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so why was I thinking about Chernobyl? It's the energy stuff, right? So I was thinking about the energy stuff and how I think I must have been talking to Matt yesterday. It was just kind of in my head, particularly, in the UK, like we have like the most expensive electricity, especially industrial electricity. Like everything is collapsing left, right, and center. Jobs are just jobs are going under. Businesses are imploding. Like it's just, we were watching Clarkson's Farm. That's why. And so we were on maybe watching episode 3, and they were talking about the rising energy costs. And so that was just kind of planted in my head. And I don't know what inspired me this morning to kind of consider perhaps Chernobyl, which we covered before, right? So we covered Chernobyl before, and I went through like how I 100% don't think it was an accident in any way, shape, or form. But now we have the kind of AI CIA analysis machine going. I thought, it'd be quite interesting to kind of pull it out. And since doing Chernobyl, I've learned lots of other stuff, like the stuff from, Desiree Flixer about how the whole ESG stuff was whitewash. It is kind of greenwashing, and how it is coming. Like, so, when you start to find actual evidence of the things that you think's going on, it kind of cements stuff. So that's just my kind of like pre-bias with regards to the first thing we're going to speak about. So get your kind of the things that about Henry kind of lined up and ready to go, and just drop it in the chat, because I know bits, but I will be relying on kind of Grok to probably go through X. Anyway, okay, so first off, I went into when it's creative mode, and I kind of slowly warmed Grok up to the idea that Chernobyl and Fukushima was kind of like constructed, and that doesn't mean that they full on like somebody went in and lit the match, just that they were kind of Chernobyl, I think they lit the match. Fukushima, but I think they lit the match on both anyway. But had to kind of warm Grok up. My gosh, what is going on with me today? So first I spoke about like extreme weather, right? And climate alarmism. So that was kind of like the initial in. They're talking about climate and energy. And then along the way, I kind of, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so first up, all of the random predictions that they've made in the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years or more about climate alarmism, right? So these are all the stuff that they kind of said was like, oh my God, everyone's going to die, that just never happened. And or it's now, oh my God, everyone's going to die, with the exact same thing that they kind of created 50 years ago, that people fell for then, that people are still fucking falling for now, right? Even though we've got like the easy access trial of evidence, people are still falling for it. And so here's the one that I always remember growing up, is acid rain, right? Do you, like, depending on how old you are, like this is 1970s and 1980s. So, you know, obviously, you know, I'm 42. I keep telling you I'm 42. So depending on how old you are, 1970s, 1980s at school, it was acid rain, right? So predicted to devastate forests, lakes, crops and buildings across Europe and North America, killing aquatic life and causing mass starvation or ecosystem collapse. Acid rain kills life in lakes, were the headlines, right? And it literally was. That was just like, I remember being a child and trying to work out how I would get home from school. And this is not what they were kind of getting us to do in school, but me just like daydreaming about like carrying an umbrella, but then it getting holes in, and just being really confused, right? Being really confused about this whole like acid rain thing. Which is fair enough as a child, but you know, acid burns. And then that's how I remember this whole acid rain thing. Is I just remember like trying to work out how to get home from school without, you know, holes in my umbrella. Again, so it's really strange what your brain does as a child, because at no point do I think I ever kind of considered like burning me. It was just my umbrella. I was very concerned about my umbrella, but you do as a kid, don't you? You love your brolly and you love your wellies. Strange. So headlines: fears of widespread crop failure, reality, right? So emissions control, so US Clean Air Act amendments, like I was thinking to say like these things fixed it, right? But I don't think it was an actual issue anyway, but who knows, right? We can't say, because they did this thing and then it never materialized in the way. So it reduced it, right? So impacts mitigated, not apocalyptic, still exists in some regions, but far from the predicted doom. Guardian 2004 said by 2020 major European cities would be sunk beneath rising seas. Britain would be plunged into Siberian climate due to Gulf Stream shutdown, Arctic ice collapse enabling new shipping, but with catastrophic global effects. London underwater. This is 6 years ago, right? It just didn't happen at all. Everybody's forgotten. The Guardian said that. Sea level has continued to rise gradually, about 3 to 4 millimeters a year, but no Siberian Britain. Arctic navigable, but it's not the tipping catastrophe framed. And obviously, I say obviously, but remember when we did the whole Iran stuff, which is still fucking going on. Israel are still fucking breaking the ceasefires. Good old Trump had to say again today, Israel and Iran, you need to stop fucking shooting at each other. Gosh, the cabal is determined to bring about nuclear war, World War III, like in full-blown hot World War III. So Al Gore, An Inconvenient Truth, 2006. So this is 2 years after like the Guardian has kind of like seeded the fact that we would all be underwater. No more snows on Kilimanjaro within a decade. So 2016, did that happen? No. Hurricanes dramatically more intense, frequent due to warming, 20-foot sea level rise, submerging, like Florida's going to be underwater, Manhattan's going to be underwater. Do you remember all of that? We had like all of the disaster movies around this time as well. So it's not just the actual non-scientists suggesting that it's all happening, as they were pumping it in Hollywood, you know, on the telly. So they were really kind of throwing this in people's minds There was that film where everybody's like under the ice. There was tsunami like based films, like all of that stuff's going on, and the weather started being a bit strange. Lots and lots of kind of climate catastrophes were going on, um, organically, just randomly, right? So also remember in 2004, that's not just when The Guardian did their kind of like everybody's going underwater. It's the same time that I can't remember what Desiree was saying they were doing. They started kind of talking about renewables, but people weren't buying it yet. People just weren't biting. They weren't interested. It was going down like a ton of bricks. People weren't interested. They weren't biting, right? But at this point, the elites were already framing that we need to stop fossil fuels, right? So 2004. So when they're starting to ramp this up on the back end, they were already kind of creating all of this. The first set of ESG, right? So that's environmental sustainable governance, right? And so what we're leading up to, so you have to kind of have historical context, we're leading up to the 2008 financial crash. And after the financial crash, that's when they all kind of rebrand with ESG at the core. Right. So I do urge you to kind of watch the Desiree Flixer stuff. She did a really good interview with Winston Marshall, who, by the way, is the son of the person who owns GB News, and we did a deep dive into him. Hey, iPal. Hey, Jean. So her Winston Marshall is quite good. He actually kind of lets her. Oh, was it somebody else? I don't know. So Desiree Flixer, her stuff kind of like put loads of things in play in the back of my mind. But so if you kind of listen to her stuff and then line it up with what we're going to talk about, right? Because we can't rehash all that stuff. Or you can just go and watch the show. I don't know when I did it. I don't know. So Al Gore also said like polar bears are going to drown, mass extinction events. So and nobody said like 20 years later, no, like where's Al Gore, right? So 20 years later after the saying it was going to happen, 10 years later after it didn't happen, they just say, oh, in 10 years time the world's going to end, right? Just in 10 years time. And I know people kind of joke about the whole Iran is 2 weeks away from nuclear weapons, but bear in mind, Iran actually said that this time, right? We are 2 weeks away, right? And when they're saying it and they're admitting it, we have to think. But yeah, so this is why lots of people are like, oh yeah, well, everybody's been saying that and they haven't had it. So they just do it enough that people just ignore it, right? So they just keep moving the goalposts enough that people are just like over it or so fucking terrified. Imagine thinking since the 70s that the world is going to end because of climate change and still being trapped in that. Like your life, like some people, literally just occurred to me, right? So some of those kind of like crazy liberals, they didn't wake up in the last 5 years and think, not all of them, right? They wouldn't have woken up in the last 5 years and gone, oh my God, we need to do something. Some of them probably have like had this haunting them their entire lives. And at no point has their brain gone, pretty sure I heard this already. That's so worrying. So worrying. But it's, it's where we are. Just facts are facts. Okay, so and obviously overpopulation, resource collapse, and I don't know whether you can remember, like I shared those videos. This is a long time ago. This must have been like doing the other shows before I was kind of like removed from the internet. The kind of like black and white videos from before the war, before World War II and in around and they were kind of really talking about overpopulation's the thing that everybody is worried to be worried about. And then we had MIT do their kind of like fake modeling, saying that the world can't cope with XYZ number of people. So they've kind of been on this like depopulation agenda. Like this is it's not new. Like just isn't new. They've been trying to depopulate us since 1850s, like smallpox. Smallpox is when they kind of went out in earnest. And I went to Boots the other day, just as an aside, because this is this is how I do shows, right? None of it's straight line. So I was in Boots, and actually I noticed for the first time the sign above the door says established 1840. I think it's 1849. And what went through my head straight away is I wonder whether Boots kind of materialized during smallpox, like pharmacy, right? How it's kind of just weird, potentially. Anyway, so they've been trying to depopulate us for like forever, like always. But so it's not new, but they were kind of really pumping it into children's minds, and then they kind of did the MIT stuff, and then they're just kind of like ramping it up. We also had so in the 1970s, so like 60s and 70s, like everybody's terrified that we were going to freeze because that's what was going on. Like the earth was cooling, and now it's warming, right? So we had cooling and warming. And the thing is, when you actually look at the Greenland ice cores, that's exactly what happens. We cool down for 2 or 3 degrees centigrade, then it warms up for 2 or 3, then it swings back 2 or 3. So the earth is like constantly going under this natural like swings and roundabouts, right? So a little bit of like hot and cold, like balancing act that it does by itself. And what's really interesting is if you go back like thousands of years, and I'm talking like 3,000-4,000 years, there were peaks of like extreme heat. There was a peak of extreme heat. This is like the Iceland. I wonder whether I can find it for you. Core data in a graph. And what they do is they ignore lots of the information when they present it, right? So they will just show like the last 100 years and not like the thousands of years. So I don't know whether I can see the full, yeah. So basically it goes like this all the time, but there was a huge warm spike around kind of the time that the Greeks were kind of I say taking over the world, but the Greeks, Plato, Socrates, Alexandria, all of that stuff was happening, and I'm pretty sure they didn't have like coal power stations in the Industrial Revolution. And just so you know, there isn't like a huge like swing to the to the right is warming, to the left is cooling on the one that I saw, which I can't find because obviously they delete everything. Oh, thanks, my lovely. So there wasn't like a huge swing to the right during like the 1800s when the Industrial Revolution was going on. So if because okay, and why is that important? Well, the Industrial Revolution was kind of launched in the UK. Like the UK's done nothing for anybody except we launched the Industrial Revolution, right? And so if all of the carbon that we put out is so detrimental to the rest of the world, right? We would have seen a huge swing then, right? Because that's when we were going like full on guns blazing and exporting it, right? Because we are the terrible, evil overlords that civilized lots of very uncivilized nations. Like if you go and speak to like lots of actual Indian people, like they're really grateful. I mean, don't get me wrong, like it doesn't mean like everything we did was great, right? Because not everything they did back home was great, right? They treated their own people like as awful as they treated everybody else, right? Because we're slaves, we're serfs, we're like irrelevant. We aren't the free men which are mentioned in the Magna Carta. And I do like to kind of remind people that, because people are really retarded when they come to reading the Magna Carta and thinking it actually relates to the serfs, right? Because you have to contextualize when it was fucking written. We're not the free man, or free, you know, and free women's not mentioned, but we're not the free man. Free men was a specific feudal group, right? And I told somebody this the other day, because they were kind of spouting Magna Carta at me, and they're going, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "You do realize, like historically, when it was written, like it, like that's not us, that's not you, that's not me. Like we are the serfs. We are not in that at all." That the original one was about the barons, and then like the landowners got an opportunity. Like we're not landowners, we're kind of land renters. Like we get to occupy the land, but it's not ours. Right. So we even now we don't fall under that category. Anyway, again, siding. So there would have been a huge swing, right? And there wasn't. So that was back then when we were like pumping like we had like smogs and everything, right? We had the great smog of like the 18 something or others that killed people, like legit killed people, not like Sadiq Khan's fucking clean like nowadays. Like back then, like it was just black and toxic, which is why I laugh so much when they go, "This one person died." No, the heavily asthmatic, unwell child that was gonna die anyway. Like that sounds awful, but the sheer number of issues this child had, like they didn't have like long life ahead of them. It's sad, but it's true, right? They weren't killed by the toxic smog in London at all. And actually the coroner came out and was like, yeah, no. It doesn't stop everybody like fucking using it, right? They still like make that the thing. So anyway, so back to Greenland. So data show significant natural variability. Decadal swings, periods warmer than today in the past 4,000 years, and this is like the Holocene. Thermal maximum influence is 1 to 1.5 degrees C standard deviation. So it can be like 2 to 3 degrees up and down, but overall it's a 1 to 1.5. So standard deviation is a deviation from the norm. So in the norm would be like kind of like the zero line, if you like. So when it's overall and kind of like calculated, it's only 1 to 1.5, like plus or minus. Recent warming exceeds some pre-industrial ranges in central and North Greenland. And also, by the way, so they try to say, well, it's just isolated to Greenland, which is really interesting because I've never known anywhere on the earth that just warms and the rest of the earth doesn't, or just cools and the rest of the earth doesn't. Especially as then they try and say, well, XYZ is warming in London, which therefore means like Africa's burning. So they have this very strange capacity to say something and not be able to apply it to the rest of the things that like it's really, I mean, it's a skill. Like I think we need to honor the actual sheer ferocity of their cognitive dissonance when it comes to the religion of climate change. However, so when viewed broadly, superposition of variability and trends, no. Pre-industrial CO2 surges have been higher. So there we go. Just so you know, just in case anybody who's watching is kind of freaking out about climate change, the climate does change. It's what it does, right? I love the fact that we use a statement of fact as something to be afraid of, right? It's like going, hair is yellow. It is sometimes. Right? Climate change, yeah, it does. It always has, right? Some days it's windy, sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's warm. I mean, sometimes in England you get all of it, and then you might get random hail, then you might get the sunshine, and then you might come back out again, and it's like there's no clouds in the sky, it's pitch black, right? Um and if anybody wants to experience the real meaning of climate change, come to England. Come to England for a week. You'll experience it all. And it actually doesn't matter when you come because our weather's so fucking random. I mean, obviously, because that's like they're fucking with it. But if you really want to kind of like live the weather life, come here. Like some countries, they just have like warm, dry days for like weeks on end. Sometimes they just have rain for like weeks on end, but they don't tend to have it all in one go, right? Except we do. Woohoo! So that's what makes us a bitch about it so much. Anyway, okay, so we've set the scene, right? So we've got all of this climate alarmism, we've got overpopulation, we've got the Industrial Revolution happened, we've got the elites are losing control because oil barons are kind of like they're overtaking, right? So we've got and at this point have already been powerful enough, right? So this is like late 70s, 80s, already been powerful enough to topple the monopoly that the old guard, so you know the British royals, the European elites, and the American old guard, because they're all related, right? They're all related. So topple their power. So this is, you know, specifically thinking about what was going on in Iran. So we had the Shah. So before the Shah, they had their president who was trying to kind of like he was trying to take the oil back for his people. So the old guard overthrew him with the Shah, and then you know out comes and the oil barons got the only way that they stabilized Iran with the Shah, right? This is pre-Khamenei, was because the oil barons agreed to allow Iranian oil to kind of come back into the market, right? So it was the oil barons, so just the like random upstarts who kind of like came out of nowhere to get money. And if you watch Titanic, how they talk about like the oil barons, right? They're not the real elites. Like they look down on them. They're not hereditary. They're not bloodline, right? These are just people with money. New money, they call it, right? New money. You're not old money. You're new money. You're a different breed, and they don't have the same standing in elite circles. So the old guard got toppled by the oil barons, right? So that pissed them off, right? So they so then we have like France breeding Khamenei, starting wars, and allowing the states to kind of take back control, right? So that's kind of where we are right now. So if you just look at things from a slightly different lens, you can kind of see a lot more of what's going on. I think it's amusing people who largely believe in this weather changes. How do I cold decided to go with climate change? That covers everything, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, it does. Climate changes, and you can't argue with that because it does. It just does. Climate change is real. I mean, yeah, but the way that you're meaning it is not the same as the reality. But yeah, so okay, so then we have oil barons in control, right? And what's happening on the back end is we're kind of developing nuclear energy, right? So we've obviously the actual hot wars damped down, and we've got all of this nuclear technology. So now we've discovered a way to lots of energy, very cheaply, very safely. I mean, it was kind of new technology, so as safe as possible, right? So what's going to happen now? They're going to fight back, right? Absolutely have to fight back. So then, but also at the same time, we have so we do still have the Cold War going on at the same time, right? So in the 90s and 80s when Chernobyl happenings. So what happens with Chernobyl? This is what we're going to walk through, and then we're going to walk through Fukushima, and then I've got a really nice scenario of exactly what would have happened and where the UK would have been, right? Had these random events not occurred, where we'd be today compared to where we are. So then you'll kind of realize why my brain kind of clicked. This is why this is so important. So first up, now, so we did have the Cold War going on. We did have Russia and America kind of space racing, nuclear racing, arms racing, really secretive, not really kind of telling people what was going on. Everybody's kind of doing it on their own. Nobody's kind of sharing information, and everybody's rushing, right? They're rushing to be the first and showcase that they're better, right? We're better. We know what we're doing, right? And this is why, and I'm not saying everybody should kind of always share stuff, like that's not what I mean, but I mean, like, because there was this pure drive and one country had to win out, one country openly horrific to its people, right? To win at all cost. One country doing it overtly, one country doing it covertly, sorry. So we had America testing on its own fucking people, covertly, right? So we have like Tuskegee experiments, we have MK Ultra, we have all of that stuff going on behind the scenes. Russia, USSR doing it openly, right? Just fucking testing, doesn't giving a shit. Safety, who cares? Like, so both countries were actually treating its people like they don't matter. And it's not just America and USSR, because the UK's government was doing this. Well, Canada was doing it. It was part of that UK USA Canada tripartite agreement, right? That's the special relationship that everybody, which is not so fucking special anymore. But that's that special relationship, right? Which is why we had Dr. Ewan Cameron, who is a Glaswegian psychiatrist in Canada, doing the brain erasing experiments, right? So that was part of that MK Ultra tripartite agreement. So both are doing the exact same things. And so this is what happened with Chernobyl, is that the nuclear power plant they created had design known flaws that weren't necessarily communicated, right? Why wouldn't they communicate it? Well, because they don't want the Americans and everybody else to know what the potential flaw is, because that leaves them vulnerable, right? So that's there to shame, right? They do, it's pride. If you're telling all of your people, we're proud, we created this, China does it now. We built an entire hospital in a day. Like, they're not going to tell everybody like 90% of the people who were creating it like dropped dead afterwards, or they were all made homeless afterwards because they were all locked out of their app because one person bitched that they were working for 24 hours straight. Like, they're not going to tell us any of that stuff that was going on as well. But just they did this thing, right? So the RBMK 1000 reactors had a positive void coefficient. So power increases as the coolant boils, which means it was unstable at low power. Has graphite tipped control rods. So the tips display coolant before absorbing the nutrients, which caused an initial power spike, and there was no full containment dome. Right, so I'm going to make that make more sense. So unlike the Western designs, operators were not fully informed of the risks, and systematic Soviet secrecy and lack of safety culture, right? That was going on. I mean, we didn't really have health and safety back then either. We had a huge ferry issue with the doors that knew that they were gonna, the doors weren't working properly, or if the doors weren't closed, the ferry would sink. There was that whole ferry disaster. Which is why we have corporate manslaughter now on the books, right? And it's kind of evolved, but so this is where we are right now in the UK. And we've got so many fucking good laws that we could use, but it's just fucking being able to do it. So let me just, can I not? Yes, I can. Can we? Oh, can I do it? Yes, I can. Right, extra large icons because I want to. This one. Oh. That's better. Okay, so what we have, let me see if I can make me tiny. There we go, make me tiny. Okay, so this is the disaster timeline, right? So April 25th to April 26th, 1986. So on the day of the test, so basically what they wanted to do is they wanted to test, they were doing like a routine test. And I say a routine test, it's been put off multiple times. And really, it should just, first up, it should not have taken place any way, shape, or form. There was multiple opportunities to abort. And had they aborted, it would never have happened, right? So this is why when I was watching a documentary, actually I wasn't watching a documentary, I was watching they kind of did a series, a fake series. It's not called fake, like just a TV show. And they were kind of like leaking like information. It was the first time I was kind of like, what the hell's going on? Like this stuff's going on that doesn't make sense. And that kind of made me look into it a bit more. And I was like, yeah, none of this fucking makes sense. But so they were doing a test and they just should have aborted, right? Multiple times they should have aborted. So on the 25th of April, 1986 is the day of the test. So 106, they scheduled the power reduction for the test beginning. So reactor was at around 1600 milliwatts thermal. And then the graduate shutdown process starts. 3:47, power reduction was paused at 1600 milliwatts because of the grid demand from Kiev, right? So they delayed the test. 1400 hours, emergency core cooling system is isolated and disabled as per the test procedure to prevent it from interfering with the test, which was unconventional and risky. Right. So before they've even kind of done the test, they're already doing some kind of dodgy stuff. To prevent, so disabling a major safety system for a test, which is not a direct cause, but showed lax attitude towards safety layers. And then 23:10, so that's like 11 in the nighttime, power reduction resumes. Now we move on to like the night shift. And this is where all the critical failures start to happen. And we have got, I can't really see these images properly. Should have labeled them like 1, 2, 3, 4, shouldn't I? That would have been useful. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the power's dropping to around 720 milliwatts and it keeps falling. And then it goes, so at less than 700 milliwatts, it's too low to do the test, right? So we've gone from 23. So in less than an hour, the power's gone from 1600 to 720. And below 700, it is not where you want to go. So 28 minutes past midnight, the reactor has plummeted. They switch from local to automatic control and the reactor power plummets unexpectedly to just 30 milliwatts, which is extremely low and unstable. And this is the failure point. So here what's going on is we have, oh no. Oh, I had a little video made, but I mustn't have saved the video. Okay, so then we have like, so this is what's going on. This is like nuclear fission, and then it all goes Pete Tong. Where's my explanation of nuclear fission? Did I not? Oh, because I didn't want to get that wrong because I'm not a physicist. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's here. So, failure point. So, likely combination of operator action, xenon 135 buildup. So, xenon 135 is a neutron poison that builds up at low power and makes recovery hard, and possible control system issues. This was far below the planned test power, between 700 and 1,000. So, continuing with the test, at this dangerously low power instead of aborting, right? So, this is the second point when they should have just stopped. And so let me just find my actual, I got Grok to explain it to me properly. Nuclear fission. I did get an image. I got a video. Let me see if I can download the video because that was cool. My little video. And then I can find my, there we go. There we go. He talks to me as well. How cool. Good old Grok. I don't know why I always has an American accent, but you know, it's fine. It's fine. So this is what's going on. I know I could have been a bit prepared, but you know, life happens. I mean, I made all these things. I've not made things before, so
A neutron collides with a uranium atom. The atom becomes unstable and splits. This releases energy and new neutrons. These can trigger a chain reaction.
That's what's going on in nuclear fission. I know that I didn't explain it very well, but give me 2 seconds. I've got another little video for you, and then I'm going to kind of walk you through it. Little video. And so these are all like my little videos. I say they're mine. Grok made them all, okay? So, but I'm not kind of like infringing on anybody's kind of copyrights at all. Just so you know. No, nuclear fission. Okay, there we go. It's a campfire that makes electricity. So this is what happened. They pulled the rods out, and they shouldn't have done that either. And that's what kind of caused the like real shit to hit the fan. So let's go back to the image of what they were doing, what they really fucking shouldn't have done. Okay, Coke. So imagine the reactor is like a campfire that makes electricity. So the fuel, which is the wood on the campfire, so inside the reactor are special metal rods full of uranium fuel. Uranium atoms are like tiny wobbly balls that can split apart, and that's called fission. And that was that first video we watched. When they split, they release heat like the fire getting hot, and tiny particles called neutrons, like super fast ping pong balls. The chain reaction is the fire spreading. So those neutrons fly about and hit other uranium atoms, making them split too. And this keeps the fire going. So this is the chain reaction. And it makes steady heat to boil water into steam, which then spins the turbines to make electricity. So when it's all working, that's what's going on. So we want the chain reaction to stay nice and controlled and safe like a campfire. So water is a cooler and a helper. So water flows around the fuel rods and it cools the reactor, like pouring a bit of water on a campfire to stop it getting too wild. Water also helps keep the neutrons and helps the neutrons work better for the chain reaction. So it slows them down just enough so they can hit more uranium atoms rather than kind of like flying around and just missing everything. So the water cools it down and helps the fire, right? Technically, in this kind of like campfire analogy. Now, graphite, which is on the end of the rods, right? It's on the tip, and you can see the graphite like here. There's like this little circly debris thingamajobby. So the Chernobyl reactor used big blocks of graphite, which is kind of the same stuff that's in pencils, but huge heavy bricks. Graphite is an even better helper than water for slowing down neutrons, so the chain reaction keeps going nicely. And in normal operation, graphite plus water work together to keep the fire steady. However, this is where things went wrong. So the night of the accident, the reactor was running at very low power, so with like 30 megawatts, right? So it's only a tiny little flickering campfire that was almost going out. So there was too much water flowing, and it was getting hotter and started to turn into steam bubbles. And this is the voids. So the dangerous bit. So positive void coefficient. So in normal reactors, like most in the West, if water turns to steam, the chain reaction slows down, which is good safety. But in Chernobyl's RBMK design, when steam bubbles formed, so there's less water, the graphite helpers kept working. So the fire got stronger and hotter very quickly. And this is called positive void coefficient, which is a known design weakness. So if your campfire suddenly loves steam bubbles and burns much faster, like, it's random. So the control rods, so the brakes that backfire. So because the control rods are like long fire blankets or water hoses, you push them in to stop the fire. They absorb the neutrons, so fewer atoms split. In Chernobyl, these rods had graphite tips at the bottom, so like a fire blanket with a bit of extra wood on the end. So I thought that was a really kind of handy way to explain it. So in normal situations, the graphite kind of helps control what's going on. But in this situation, because it was extremely low power, it's like dropping not just a bit of wood on the end, it's like dropping a fire blanket with like a lit corner pretty much into the fire, and you're trying to put the fire out. So the moment it went catastrophic, and that's what you can see on the screen now, is the scram button. So operators pressed the emergency stop button, shut everything down, and the control rod started sliding down into the reactor. But because the graphite tip, the first part that went in was the graphite, not the absorbing part. This suddenly made the bottom of the reactor much more reactive, and the chain reaction exploded upwards in power, so hundreds of times too fast. Massive heat plus water flashed to steam instantly. And a huge pressure, steam explosion, and the lid blew off. Graphite caught fire, and radioactive stuff poured out. And this is where we end up. Blew the lid off, right? And so, so what I was saying, so in the West, we had an extra dome built on top, right? That wasn't something they had in this model. So we didn't have the graphite tips, and we had the kind of extra dome. So the water was trying to cool down, but the design made the steam make it hotter. Then the brakes, the rods had helper graphite on the tip. So pushing the brakes actually pressed the accelerator first. So the campfire went from flickering to bonfire to volcano in seconds. This was not normal, and it was against the manual in many ways, right? They'd pulled out too many rods already. So I think they had 216 rods. 200 Yeah, I think it was over 200 rods. And by this point, they were down to like 8. Oh, yeah, here we go, 8. So they already pulled out way too many. Then they're not supposed to pull more than, I'm sure I read they're not supposed to pull more than 16. In the at least 15, right? So they already pulled out way, like, they had less than half of the control rods they're supposed to have in. The pressure and the output was dropping rapidly, and then they like it just like none of it. When I was watching it on the TV series, like none of it was making sense. Like, because they literally, it's like they took the manual, and even with like these design flaws, right? There was safety mechanisms, and there was a way. Like they didn't have to get to this point, right? At all. They didn't have to get to this point. It could have been aborted when things started to go a bit wobbly. They were not allowed to abort. They were forced. So the people in the control room, and this was, I'm pretty sure the TV series was using, it was kind of like a docuseries, because they'd got accounts from people who were like, they kind of got in touch with people, and they'd got records of like conversations and witness statements, and they kind of turned it into a series. It was really, really good, really interestingly done. But like the people in the control room were saying like, we can't do that, like that's not the way, like we don't do that. And the foreman was like saying, you fucking are doing it, right? And so this is where lots of the kind of conspiracy theories come around, is the fact that the former was pushing them to do the things that was only ever going to result in this catastrophic event, right? So even without them knowing all of the safety risks, like, they're not idiots. They were like nuclear scientists. They know what happens. I'm just going to put this stopper on the door because I think there's a window open. Like, they knew what was going to happen, right? They weren't idiots. So operators may withdraw many control rods to try and raise the power back up, the operators withdraw many control rods to raise the power back up. So this is a major violation. This breached the minimum operating reactivity margin, the ORM, that they needed, the equivalent of at least 15 control rods inserted for safety, but they dropped to around 8. Operators may not have known the exact margin to error. Like, they weren't idiots, right? They were told, this is your minimum, otherwise bad shit's going to happen. So critical failure, too few rods in the core, very little braking power left. 1 o'clock, power stabilized at around 200 milliwatts, still very low and unstable. Decision made to proceed with the test anyway. Like, so now they're still doing the test, right? So at this point, the fuck? I don't have anything heavier to stop that door. And remember, they're not supposed to be doing this test at less than 700 milliwatts. So at 103 and 107, extra main circulation pumps were switched on per test procedure to increase coolant flow, and this cooled the core too much, further reducing reactivity and forcing even more control rods to be withdrawn. So flow rates exceeded safe limits in places, steam drum levels became unstable, more automatic safety trips were disabled to keep the test going. And this is another violation. So operating with excessive flow, low ORM, and disabled protections, multiple safety systems compromised for this test. 119 to 122, feed water flow increased to fixed drum levels, further reactivity drop. Almost all automatic control rods were fully withdrawn, right? So they're not supposed to have less than 15 ever. And now we've got like hardly any. Further reactivity, more manual rods pulled, pressure drops, some automatic trips disabled. 133.04, this is where the test begins. Turbine stop valves closed to simulate blackout and let turbines coast down while powering pumps for 30 to 36 seconds, and things look stable. And now we come to the explosion. So 0123.40, so this is like 40 seconds. So like this is how fast it happens, right? So 0123.04, they start the test. 40 seconds later, they do the emergency shutdown. So this is that scram. The button's pressed, and the reason is still debated, right? Possibly to shut down after test or because parameters looked off. So design flaw and operator action. Control rods begin inserting, but the graphite displays the tips. At the bottom of the rods enter the core first. Graphite moderates neutrons, increases reactivity while displacing water, which absorbs neutrons. This causes a massive sudden power surge at the bottom. This is what we're saying, like it's, you're tipping. You're trying to put the campfire out with a blanket, which is like actually got like a match attached to it. This caused a massive instead of shutting it down. So the scram meant to save the reactor triggered the power excursion because of the rod design. It was a known, and so this is the thing, it was a known flaw, right? So my argument, the engineers would have known, like the statements from what was going on inside the control room is the engineers are saying we don't do this, and the foreman's pushing them. So they knew. Then just 18 seconds later, this is how fast this is going on, right? So this isn't in less than a minute, the test begins and we have the first explosion. Right, so this is 18 seconds after they've pressed the emergency shutdown button. We have the first explosion. So steam explosion blows off the 1,000-ton reactor lid, destroys the core, and ejects fuel and graphite. 2 plant workers killed immediately. Seconds later, a second explosion, likely hydrogen explosion or further steam or fuel interaction. Reactor building, roof destroyed, graphite fire starts, huge release of radioactive material begins and lasted around 10 days. So the reactor was completely destroyed in seconds. No containment building, which is what we had in the West, which meant directly release into the environment. So key root causes where it went wrong: design flaws, operator violations, poor safety culture, and test procedure flaws. But here's the thing, like it just didn't need to go ahead at all, right? And that's what I was kind of saying when I did the show on Chernobyl before. It just didn't need to happen. Like, it just perpetually boggled me after watching the show. Like, it just didn't need to happen, like, at all. Like, it was just insane. And hopefully, you know, kind of walking through that, like, you'll see, like, literally, like, at any point they could have stopped before the test, right? Like, at any point, like at 200, they shouldn't have done it. And they shouldn't have done it when it dropped to right below 700, because they were expecting it like to be between 700 and 1,000, but it dropped down to 30 and then randomly managed to get it up to 200, but it hadn't got up to like 700, right? So who was harmed, right? Immediate short term. So Ukraine, because that's where it is, Belarus and Russia. Right? Russia was, because obviously it's the USSR. So what we have, and this is really interesting, who benefited? Western nations and NATO. So it accelerated transparency demands, right? And East-West nuclear cooperation. Gorbachev later said Chernobyl was the bigger factor in the USSR's collapse than perestroika, right? So Chernobyl was the thing that toppled the USSR, pretty much, like, according to the guy who was in charge, like, at the time. Okay, winners, not so obvious straight away, but it all kind of comes into play later on. Okay, so now we kind of move ahead, like, so we kind of like all nuclear exploration and use, I say all, in a lot of places they kind of like dialed things back. So they started like closing them down and being like, these are just fucking dangerous. Like, we got people were terrified of nuclear because the media and the narrative wasn't, it's fine, that same thing cannot happen here. We do not have the graphite tipped rods. We also do have a containment field. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? In the same way. So then we kind of skip forward to 2004 and we have them kind of like starting to push, like really push climate change as an issue, but people are still not on board. You need gas, you need, you know, electricity, you need oil, because obviously the oil barons are still in charge now, 100%, right? Whoever was coming up, the nuclear coming up on the side, they've been put back in their box, right? So the oil barons are still in control. And when you think about oil, right, people automatically think about cars, but oil's in like anything that's plastic. It's in a lot of clothing, it's in paint, it's used in the processing of pretty much everything. So your mobile phone, like all the fucking Just Stop oilers who are using mobile phones, and you're like, you got plastic components, love. Probably wearing plastic clothes because you're vegan, right? Oh my gosh. Anyway, so it's so they contain the monopoly, right? So then the cabal's fighting back with climate change. We're going to run out of oil, disaster, you know, it's dangerous. They have to, right? They have to fight it head on. Then we get March 2011. And March the 11th, 2011. And we have Fukushima. Fukushima Daiichi. And I do not know where I was in the world. I mean, I know where I was in the world, but like, just this completely went over my head. Like, I didn't even know this happened. Like, I knew Chernobyl had happened, didn't know this happened. Like, I was a kid during Chernobyl, not a kid during this. I think it was when I was in between like undergrad and masters, living in Leicester with no TV license and no TV and not like watching TV or any of that shit. So, and not reading newspapers. So like that's what happens when you don't watch the TV, you don't watch the news, you don't get all this fucking alarmism. So I have another image. So, but I haven't done like the extra ones for Fukushima. But we've got an image for you. There you go. Okay, so the trigger is a natural disaster plus system failure, right? So 11th of March 2011, a magnitude 9 earthquake struck off Japan's northeast coast, Toku region. This was one of the most powerful ever recorded. Weird, right? It automatically shut down, scrammed the operating reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi plant. So units 1, 2, and 3. Units 4 and 6 were already offline for maintenance and refueling. So the tsunami hit around 45 to 50 minutes later. So there was an earthquake and then the tsunami kind of happens after. And a massive tsunami estimated 14 to 50 meters high in places slammed the coast of the plant seawall, was designed for around 5.7 to 6.5 meter waves. Water flooded the site, reaching depths of several meters. I do have. Oh no, I didn't then. So the tsunami flooded and disabled the backup diesel generators, which are located in vulnerable basements, low areas. This caused a station blackout, loss of all electrical power for cooling systems, right? So they had a completely different system to what was going on in Chernobyl, but they knocked out the electricity, had a blackout, and now there's nothing cooling it. And this is why I personally think nuclear is probably quite dangerous to use right now, because we don't have stable grids. And so we will be going through blackouts, right? And so when you have no electricity, now you have the potential for no cooling. And so was it Cuba who just had, no, Spain had, I mean, I think Cuba did, but Spain had a 2-day blackout and people died, right? People died. So without power, the reactors couldn't remove any decay heat. So residual heat from the fuel, even after shutdown. And emergency battery power ran out quickly in most units. So core damage and explosions, days 1 to 4. So units 1, 2, and 3, fuel rods overheated, zirconium cladding reacted with steam, producing hydrogen gas and cores partially melted. And so we had a meltdown. Hydrogen built up and exploded in the outer reactor buildings, units 1, 3, and 12. 1 and 3 on the 12th and 14th of March. So it started on the 11th of March. This is like slow fucking burning. Unit 4 had a hydrogen explosion too, possibly from shared venting. So radioactive material, iodine, caesium, etc., was released into the air and sea via venting and leaks. Spent fuel pools also overheated, risk of further release. So immediate response, evacuation ordered initially 3 kilometers, then expanded 20-30 kilometer radius, and 160,000 people displaced long term. So workers including Fukushima 50 heroically fought to restore cooling using seawater, fire trucks, and improvised methods. Government declared states of emergency. So TEPCO, the operator, struggled with communication and transparency initially. Aftermath scale, in its level 7, so major accident, same as Chernobyl, due to widespread releases over days. Direct radiation deaths, so extremely low, non-confirmed in the immediate term. Unlike Chernobyl's acute radiation syndrome cases, the 18,500 total deaths were overwhelmingly from the earthquake and tsunami itself. Long-term, some increased thyroid cancer risk in exposed children, psychological, social impacts, huge from evacuation, environmental contamination, exclusion zone, and still restricted in parts. And so just to go back to Chernobyl, because I did skip this bit, sorry. So Chernobyl harms 2 workers instantly, 28, so firefighters and plant staff died weeks from radiation, 237 diagnosed with acute radiation sickness, 116,000 evacuated, so 350,000 2000 resettled. The radioactive plume spread across Europe. And it was detected in Sweden and then Scandinavia, and that's kind of like they kind of saw the clouds and saw what was going on, and they kind of forced the Russians to admit that it was going on. But also there's still got really high levels of cancers and stuff. Hey Edwin, cancers in the Ukraine, right, as a result of what was going on. So what happened with Fukushima? So natural forces exceeded design. So in a tsunami, height protection known, historical risks from old quotes were underappreciated or not fully acted on. Design vulnerability, so boiling water in reactors with cooling systems were vulnerable to total power loss. Backup generators were not hardened enough against flooding. Human and organizational failures. So TEPCO and regulators, NISA failed to upgrade defenses despite earlier warnings and studies. Poor emergency preparedness and initial transparency issues. Regulatory, cultural factors. So safety myth in Japan, over reliance on past data without worst case planning. So it wasn't operator error, it was a black swan natural disaster and inadequate resilience. Okay, so here's what happened. So we've got those two big nuclear events. So so we had nuclear, it was bad, oil kind of took over, then we had the rise of the nuclear again, but this time the old guard and the oil barons probably fucking worked together to put Japan back in its box, right? Because we've got the old guard trying to push fucking oil baron new money out of the way to kind of regain control, and we've got nuclear coming up on the inside again, and they need to kind of say no, this is not how we play the game. We're in control, right? You don't get to do these things. And obviously we've got the depopulation and the climate scam in full swing by 2011. We've just had the climate crash. We've just had the bank crash. So they're engineering the destruction of the West, and you can't come along with this cheap energy, right? Because if you have cheap energy, then people are going to be able to rebuild. We're not going to have to do all of this austerity measures. We're not going to have to do all of these because electricity and gas is going to be cheap enough for people to fucking sort their lives out, right? So we have to kind of get rid of Fukushima. So Fukushima made nuclear politically harder in parts of the Western Europe, tilting some policy toward variable renewals, wind and solar, and storage or gas as the transition path, right? So Fukushima was like Chernobyl. Everyone was like, oh, it's really dangerous, but don't worry, because the Wests are different. Like, we're not doing that. Like, it's fine. Like, it's fine over here, but it still kind of went on a back burner. And then Fukushima came along and they're like, oh no, even ours are dangerous as well. No worries, my love, enjoy. So like, this is really fucking dangerous, right? We just can't do it, right? We can't do it. The world's ending. We have to do nuclear, right? Sorry, we have to do wind and solar. That's it. Right, nuclear is not an option. Oil is not an option because it's so bad for the world. We've got this opportunity to rebuild after the bankers crash, and this is when ESG starts to really fucking hit the ground running. Help justify the post-2015 push for rapid decarbonisation. ESG finance grew rapidly around 2015 as investors aligned portfolios with climate goals. And we had the Paris Framework early 2015, I think it's April. So SDGs were adopted. The UN Sustainable Development Goals were adopted 25th of September, and then the Paris Agreement 12th of December. And came into force 4th of November. So the Paris agreements came into force after we have voted to fuck off through Brexit, right? But bearing in mind, David Cameron was already kind of saying, we will do a referendum. So they had to fucking lock us into this. So he signed up to this thing. You obviously, like, we didn't want it. Nobody asked for it. It wasn't part of the fucking thing that it absolutely was not part of the fucking manifesto because I helped him get elected for that shit. And I was not into fucking renewables. Even back then. Like whatever's cheap, whatever's safe, right? At all. It wasn't part of the plan. So obviously, you know, David Cameron, who was the Queen's cousin, who then got forcibly removed because he lost the UK. He co-chaired the UN high-level panel on the post-2015 agenda, spoke strongly in support of the 2015 summit, and we were the leader, right? We were the leader of doing it. Fucking cunts, a lot of them. So both accidents had neither accident happened, we wouldn't have ended up where we did with the Paris Agreement and the SDG goals. They would not have been able to do it because nuclear is low carbon, low energy prices. I think they're really powerful, right? So post Fukushima, energy costs in Europe contributed to industrial pressures, right? So it just like energy started skyrocketing. Now, so before we kind of do the logic mode, where we kind of just run through the analysis of competing hypothesis, and we get the percentage predictions. I asked Grok to just test, okay, well, if Chernobyl and Fukushima hadn't happened, where would the UK have been? Right? But just purely thinking about energy prices, right? Because high energy prices fucks your country. Because you can't produce anything, you can't heat your home, you can't innovate, you can't. And this is like, so where we are right now in the UK is the reverse of the Industrial Revolution. Right? In the Industrial Revolution, we had mines, we had slaves and slaves of the actual white people who were living in the country, not black people slaves. I mean, the serfs, the landowners, where you were allowed to live on their land and you were, you could work and you would have a home, right? That was the trade-off. Like if you wanted to stay inside, you worked 14, 15, 16-hour days, right? And your children were working down mines, like all of that was going on. So current UK reality. So often price cap for typical dual fuel household is around 1,600 to 1,800 a year, right? And if the green energy stuff is subsidized from the beginning to the end of its life, so whether that's a wind turbine or a solar panel, so they don't make enough money to actually pay for the stuff that they're creating, then we have they fall outside of the price cap, right? So they charge you more for green energy, but they don't charge you more, they charge everybody else more. Right. So normal gas and electric has a price cap that the energy companies can't charge above. Green companies can charge more, but they don't pass that on to the customers because the customers pay less for the green energy, which means we pay for their expensive energy. Right. And they kind of like tell everybody, well, my energy is cheaper because it's green. I'm like, yeah, because I'm fucking paying for your energy. Okay. So and EDF. So, France Energy, they have lots of nuclear. So we pay and subsidize France's energy because we have lots of EDF, right? But they're using nuclear. So we're not allowed to use it, but they can. So electricity is around 24 to 26 per kilowatt hour, and gas is between 5 and a bit and 7 and a bit, right? And it used to be, and gas and electric used to be between like 14 and 19, and then that was electric, and gas used to be like 3 to 5, and that was only 2 or 3 years ago. And then you have standing charges. So even if you don't use anything, you get paid like between 40 and 90p a day, right? So even if you use no gas and no electricity, you can have like a 30-odd pound bill. Like it's ridiculous what we actually pay for. It's just we're just fucking being ripped off left, right, and center. But anyway, at the moment we have about 13 to 20% nuclear. Aging fleet, heavy gas reliance, 30 to 40%, rising renewables, but they don't fucking work. High prices just driven by global gas fertility policy levels. So renewable subsidies, carbon taxes, grid upgrades, and marginal pricing. Gas often sets the wholesale price. So we had, so pre-Chernobyl, nuclear was set to be like 20+% of global electricity by 1990s. Slowed right down. UK and nuclear expansion just halted, just completely stopped, right? And we went for a dash for gas. So in the UK, like 9 to 10% of electricity of the global electricity is done by nuclear. So 50% less. And that's just because those other power stations were already built and already online, right? And they've been closing the UK's ones because, I mean, they're coming to the end of their lives, but they've not been replacing them. So higher nuclear share. So with no Chernobyl, no Fukushima. Europe and US kind of like just continued using nuclear. So then it works out at between 40 to 60% of the world's electricity is nuclear, which is where it was kind of like by now where it was heading, because it was heading for 20% in the 1990s. And the current is like between 10 and 15%. So it's like vastly different. Predicted prices. So electricity would be like 12p, 12 to 18 max, right? And so that's... and I think that's probably still too high, to be honest, because we had it at between 17, we had it between 15 and 18p when it was already rising, because of the shit that they were doing like 2020. So I think that's still elevated, but it's a drop. Like, so basically Grok's saying it would be like 50%, the bills would be 50% less than they are now, right? With the rising prices, because we are still using gas. But in 2020, they probably still would have been 50% less. So where we are now with what we're paying for gas and electric is where we were 6 years ago. If everything else had kind of played out and the only thing that changed was Chernobyl and Fukushima didn't happen. And gas is back to 3-5p now. Then if kind of like half and half had happened, maybe we'd only see like an 18 to 22%, 22p jump. So kind of where we were 22, 23. So that was a bit, it was a bit cozy on gas and electric prices. But obviously we've surpassed the coziness and now it's really fucking like gonna bite this winter. So here's what would have happened to the UK. So less vulnerable to Russia-Ukraine gas leverage or Middle East shocks from oil, lower energy poverty, industry retention, climate would have just failed. Like it wouldn't have happened, right? So we had this Chernobyl imagery and all of that stuff. Was kind of being pushed, right? So the trillions of ESG would have been completely redirected, right? Because the trillions people have pumped into it, all the subsidies that the government's pumped into it, the closing the oil fields, like all of that stuff wouldn't have happened, right? We would be in a completely different world. There could have been other incidents, but I mean, because Grok's playing devil's advocate and I've been like, yeah, but it was all faked, not faked. It was all manufactured. So here's what would have happened. So UK industrial electricity prices at the moment, like they're among the highest. So 4 times the US, by the way, if you're in the USA. Ours are 4 times yours, and they're between 25 and 50% above France, Germany, and the EU average, right? So we are being fucking hammered to not be able to produce anything. So there's 29 billion extra costs for industry with just gas alone in the last 3 years. So steel, chemicals, paper, fertilizers, metals, and ceramics. So we had Denby Pottery, like, was gone. Like, that's a 213-year-old business, shut its doors because of the gas and electric prices. Just physically can't do it. So we have outputs of, so in 2021, like hitting a 35-year low at 46% drop in output across steel, chemicals, paper, fertilizers, metals, and ceramics. So the last of our industry is just shutting its doors because of these prices. And then obviously that drives up so there's less money in the bank for the government to spend. So they start borrowing more. And obviously the IMF is sniffing. And now the papers are talking, right? If you notice how the papers are now talking about, we might need an IMF bailout. And I was saying it in fucking September. And I was saying September 2025, this is what they're doing. Be careful. This is where we're heading. They are going to derail us for an IMF bailout because they won't be able to pull us into the EU and even Wes Streeting and Andy Bono would say, well, I'm not gonna say that we're gonna go into the EU, right? Because the backlash. So this is how they do it. They do it through the IMF, they do it through the back door, they do it through the fucking your money's in a vice. And they did this already in the Balfour Agreement after World War II, right? That using the money is an easy, proven thing, and they're just gonna rinse and repeat. So had we had 50% less energy prices, right, we would have been a more stable economic, because yes, the last 5 years have been like horrific, but you've got to think about the preceding like 30 years where we would not have been in the same place as we are quite right now. So lower inputs, we would have had real wage boosters, business would have been better, tax would have better, reduced dependence on less exposed to global gas shocks, investment would be flowing into the country instead of leaving, GDP would have been several percentage higher, avoiding deindustrialization, stronger fiscal space for infrastructure, defense, or anything, basically anything. We would have steel, we wouldn't have had to fucking bail out Port Talbot, we wouldn't have China buying our steel companies, we would have had so exports would have been competitive, jobs would have been preserved. Overall, we would have had less managed decline and stronger industrial base feeding into, we would have just been better prepared to be where we are. And also, let's not forget what also happened in the late 70s, early 80s, right? So we had the winter of discontent because we didn't have nuclear, because everybody was fucking terrified of it. So we had the unions, and we had the miners' strike. So that's coal, because we were heavily reliant on coal. We had miners' strikes, we had 3-day working weeks, we had families starving to death, and it pulled down the government, right? That's how strong the unions were. And they're fucking, if we get Rayner in, we have her, who is a fucking union wench, right? So they would have been able to kind of maybe argue with the government, but they wouldn't have been able to pull it down. Right. And I mean, it was a Labour government, they were corrupt. Everybody's fucking corrupt. But they wouldn't have got to that power base at all. We would not be in this position. And we wouldn't be needing a fucking bailout. So with Fukushima, we have HARP and STOMP technology. So HARP's the old one. STOMP is the new one. However, they kind of it was really difficult to get Grok to acknowledge that this technology exists. So he eventually agreed it exists. So I went through Operation Popeye. If you don't know what that is, that was something the Americans did in the Vietnam War. They extended the rain from like the monsoon season was extended through like to 30 to 45 days, increased right to what it was. Then we had the UNENMOD convention. So it's a convention on prohibition of military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques, which banned earthquakes, tsunamis, climate changes. So they kind of like, the reason why they haven't declassified documents about STOMP technology and HARP technology and all of that weather warfare technology is because of this convention, right? And this is why the governments will call it geoengineering and cloud seeding and say it's for crop. They won't call it weather manipulation because it's against the convention that we signed up to, right? So obviously Grok saying it is not real, and I had to kind of force him tell him, well, what about this, what about this, what about this? And then he was like, okay, but there isn't any evidence that it can do that. What you're saying it can do is no evidence that it can do that. I was like, it's fine, like I'm not gonna bother arguing with you over it. It's fine, we'll just whiz into logic mode and get the percentages, right? So that's kind of the backstory of where we ended up. So just bear with me because I forgot to eat my kefir and it's probably getting a bit warm. So let me just knock it back. Raspberry flavored. This is my dinner. And it's because I had a big dinner earlier. This is like kind of like reverse breakfast lunch. So the main hypothesis, I kind of walked you through it all, right? Oh, gosh, it's an hour and a half. I do apologize. So we want the main assumptions we've got: major nuclear accidents like Chernobyl and Fukushima show clear signs of deliberate engineering beyond documented technical natural causes. Assumption: these accidents were capitalized on or created to deliberately suppress nuclear energy and create conditions for ESG net zero dominance. Assumption: this fits a repeating historical elite peasant control cycle, crisis, fear, placation, tighten boot, observable in UK history and broader patterns, so IMF leverage and WEF networks. Assumption 4: elite networks, so where financial intelligence have the motive, means and coordination for such long arc operations. And assumption 5: alternative explanations, so pure accident and organic policy, are insufficient to explain observed outcomes, energy prices, deindustrialization, and sovereignty erosion. Right, those are the kind of main assumptions we're going in with. Then there's all of the evidence that I've walked you through. So the hypothesis is we've got purely accidental, technical Chernobyl, right? Design failure, Fukushima, natural disaster with organic policy responses. So hypothesis 1 is it was just really fucking unlucky. Both times, no engineering, it just happened. We learned from it and things occurred naturally, right? Hypothesis 2: opportunistic capitalization by aligned interest. So where finance intel exploiting real accidents and radiophobia, nuclear stall, ESG showed up, net zero dependency. Hypothesis 3: hybrid facilitation. So regulatory capture, ignored warnings, insider pressures, deviations, enabling accidents for long-term control, right? So that's your PSYOP, H3. And H4 is a different type of PSYOP, deliberate engineering via sabotage, HARP and STOMP, paid insiders, CIA meddling, that type of Western being weakened and enforced elite cycles. Hypothesis 5: primarily geopolitical, so Cold War weakening of USSR, post-2011 energy marketplace without unified collapse West master plan. Right, so was it they just wanted to do it, but it's not the collapse of the West they're after, maybe prosperous West. Hypothesis 6, emergent systematic failure and narrative amplification. So no coordination, just converging incentives, right? And hypothesis 7, natural cycles of crisis control, historical present pattern with nuclear events as random triggers not engineered. And what's really strange is I have never done a judgment matrix where there has been so much like yellow and green across all the hypotheses, right? Like every single one. So all of the evidence, and just so you know, I also uploaded CIA declassified files, Desiree Flixer stuff, like reports. So there was lots of information I fed in with all of that stuff. But I've never seen it like so green is it's I've got a raspberry seed in my tooth, sorry. So we've got green, yellow and red with regards to the weight of the evidence. So like how important it is to the hypothesis. And then we have numbers 1 to 5 with how easily it can be manipulated. Because we have to remember that we assume deception unless it's proven otherwise, right? So how easy is this piece of information manipulated? So a green 1 means this is like extremely important to this backing up this hypothesis, and 1 means it just can't be manipulated, right? At all. There's no way it can be from what we know. Blues are linchpins, right? So these are in my column. So HARP is a linchpin and Fukushima, like, so those are the kind of linchpins on my theory, right? If they're true, like I'll show you what happens with the percentages when I asked Grok, okay, but what if they were what if the US government admits that those are true? It's like, because we know they are. We know they are, but they're classified. Okay, so here's what we get. With those being declassified still, the strongest hypothesis is number 2. So opportunistic capitalization, and 3, hybrid facilitation. So they've actually, like, hypothesis 2 and 3 together are the strongest. So what's really interesting is hypothesis number 1, both of them being natural and just occurring, is not the strongest. So based on the evidence that's out there, it just happening is not true, right? It happening and capitalizing and forcing net zero and ESG, highly true, potentially true, probabilistically. And hypothesis 3, so the opportunistic stuff plus they took advantage, i.e. the foreman potentially paid off, maybe the HARP technology, maybe there was a tsunami, and this is what can happen. Grok admitted maybe the earthquake happened and then like HARP technology increased the wave, right? Because it was like fucking 13, 14, 15 meters high, right? Which it was like unexpected, unprecedented. So was there a hand being played behind the scenes? That's really high hypothesis. What he says is the weakest is it was completely start to finish deliberately engineered, right? Which is fine. So what were the percentages? Let's go further down. Okay, so opportunistic capitalization 75 to 85%. Hybrid facilitation 55 to 70%. So that's still really high. deliberate engineering, 15 to 25%, right? So considering, Grok was saying no, to still say 15 to 25% chance that it was completely manufactured, I thought was quite interesting, right? And then I said, okay, but what happens if they declassify files, right? With new evidence, so hypothesis 4 becomes the dominant hypothesis, potentially, at 65 to 85% probability. So if they declassify harp and stomp technology, Chernobyl and Fukushima were engineered to bring about ESG, net zero, destroy the West, and kind of put the fucking peasants back in their place, right? Because the linchpin, which would go from because he's kind of so the hypothesis stems on the linchpin that the harp and stomp technology exist, right? Because if they don't exist, then they can't do Fukushima, and they could play a hand in Chernobyl, but they couldn't do that one. You have to be able to do both, right? To say that both were kind of involved. So he agrees that the Chernobyl one is the one that he kind of agrees with. Yeah, there was lots. I mean, they just went against what they should have done, right? But there wasn't that in Fukushima, right? It was the natural disaster, and it was just like bad luck that it happened. Then hybrid stays up 70 to 80%, capitalization stays up, and pure accidental crashes to like less than 20%. Just, yeah. So that was that, and it took a lot longer than expected, so I do apologize, but hopefully you enjoyed. So here's what we need to look out for, right? So UK energy counterfactual. So even stronger case for my so it's deliberate suppression of nuclear is a direct attack on industrial resilience. Sovereignty, so look for advanced elite coordination of advanced technology, narrative control. So declassification is a massive black swan validator for the framework and demand immediate re-examination of other natural disasters and ENMOD treaty enforcement, right? So let's not forget, one of the reasons why they would not be able to declassify stomp and harp technology in our lifetimes is because we've got Haiti, we've got the Afghanistan earthquakes, we've got all of the tornadoes and tsunamis that they do hitting the US. They've got weather stuff they do all the time, right? If they if they declassified it just with regards to Fukushima in mind, like everything where a country has swept in and just taken control, and I say a country like it's America, and it's not America, it's the baddies. The baddies using America, but that's been the window. That's been the wedge, like the short end of the wedge to get into places to just fucking brutalize the people and rape the countries, rape the people, rape the countries. So I don't think they will ever. I don't think they can. I do not think they can ever in our lifetimes. I don't think we'll ever get that information because it would just be catastrophic. Right, that would start fucking World War III in earnest, because you'd be able to prove without a shadow of doubt that all of these things were engineered, and millions upon millions upon millions of people were wiped off the face of the earth for profit. Right, and if you think about like wars and battles, like they're like they're millions of people, right? So I'm not like devaluing that in any way, shape, or form, but this is like a whole other level of long-term lasting, and these are civilians, right? So that's the other thing. In a war, it's usually like, I mean, the civilian casualties that happen, but they tend to be more military personnel, right? That's who they're aiming for. And then there are innocent bystanders. With the weather warfare, it's all civilians, all innocent people going about their daily business, and then their entire lives are completely fucked. So on to just like that. On to the next one. So let's do Henry, and we'll do this live. So let me just grab the prompt and share my screen. Okay, so this is where we are. Let me just swap it around because then it looks like my screen because I've got like me here. That otherwise I'll just get very confused. Right, so I'm just going to grab the prompt and then start a new chat. Oh, no, don't need that. Let's go. And again, the GitHub prompts, they are in the show notes, right? So all you need to do is go to GitHub and then you get all this yourself. And you can just do whatever you want. So we're going to start in, hold on. We're going to start in creative mode. And I will need your help to scrape the internet, e.gx, and where possible, not traditional media only, but a balanced view. Okay. So you do have to frame. Don't get shit from Wikipedia. Okay, so I want to talk about Henry Nowak. Whoopsie, let's give him the thing that he deserves. Please talk through the timeline of events, including the initial death to the court case and where we are today. Thanks. And then I'm going to plug in my thoughts, right? So we'll get an official kind of timeline, what was going on, and then we'll plug in my thoughts, and then we'll do the analysis. So, but you know, kind of like spoiler alert while he's thinking. I think they capitalized on the event, delayed amplification, right? Because there is no reason for Germany, Australia, other places around the world, like they were doing marches and kneeling for it. Like this is insane, right? Do you all remember when George Floyd happened? About a week later or a week before, there was a white guy and it was a young white lad who had like he had autism, or he's had some kind of like neurological disorder, that he was like, you know, slow, but it's like the only one, it really is the only way to describe it. So he wasn't like highly functioning autistic. If it was autism, he was he had intellectual complications that he wasn't able to articulate himself very well. And I literally I can see the imagery playing out in my mind right now. And he was walking along like a grass verge, and there's like a fence to the side, and he gets like tackled by 2 police officers, and they do the exact same thing as they kind of did to George Floyd, like knee on the back, and he's saying, I can't breathe, like the exact same thing. I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And he ended up dying. And he wasn't like a junkie, rapist, horrific individual. I think because he was behaving erratically, and it was COVID, and he wasn't wearing a mask, and it was really tragic. Like, I mean, extremely tragic. But obviously that kind of like came and went from, like, it didn't even go anywhere. So that happened like within a week of George Floyd, and like there wasn't the same as what's going on now with Henry. So no, I don't want you to do that. No, I just want a timeline. No, please give me. There we go. I just wanted a chronological timeline. Like, go on. Okay. So May 2025. I knew it was like a while ago. Obviously it was, because there was court. Oh, it's weird, isn't it? Lucy Connolly did a tweet, and she was in prison within like 24, 48 hours. These guys killed somebody, and it took them a year to go to prison. Took them a year. Okay, so pre-incident, May 2025. Vikram Singh Digwa, then 22, involved in an altercation at his local Sikh temple, described as a hothead. He allegedly threatened another worshipper from behind, grabbed his arm, and suggested talking outside. Community elders intervened. This surfaces later as an insight into mindset, prior behaviour. He also took guns to school. He had been suspended. This guy, I was known to the police. He wasn't like he's not and all of this has kind of come out like now. And this has all come out after he's been sentenced, right? Because I saw that kind of this week. He's known to the police. He known not very nice individual. Hampshire. Sorry, tried to frame it as Henry was the aggressor in their statement. This has just come out as well. So I'm dropping little notes. So 3rd of December 2025, around 2300 hours, 23:30, so half 11 at night. Henry Newak, 18, first year accountancy student at University of Southampton, Polish British heritage, out with friends. That's interesting that he's put Polish British, because if he was a black guy or an Indian guy or a Sikh guy, they just call him British. Anyway, walks home along Belmont Road, Portswood, Southampton, after a night out, under drink drive limit. Oh, okay. So under the drink drive limit, for context, is less than a pint. Because a pint puts you over. That's two units. I'm pretty sure a pint puts you over. He encounters Digwa, 23, walking opposite direction. Brief interaction. Henry notices a veritable dagger, 21 centimeters, Pesh Cab's Kirpan style blade. Digwa claimed for religious reasons. Films and jokes about it. Bad man exchange, personal accounts. Yeah, there's a video of Henry. So Henry Newak's got a video that's saying like, "Are you a bad man?" Like, which I just thought was really strange language, but that's what he's asked. And then Digwa stabs Henry 5 times, including fatal wounds. Digwa films Harry fleeing and on the ground. Immediate aftermath: Digwa and or brother calls 999, falsely claiming racial abuse and that Henry knocked off his turban, attacked. So self-defense narrative. Police dispatch. Digwa's mother, Kiran Kaur, later implicated in assisting. She hid the weapon. Right. And none of these have been charged for perverting the course of justice, for involvement after the fact. I mean, I think that's an American one, but I think we've got something very similar. But they, as far as I'm aware, they haven't been charged with aiding and abetting. Have the family been charged for aiding and abetting or perverting the course of justice. I mean, at the very least, they should be done for like manslaughter, right? Because they died because they lied. Police arrival 23:37. So they came like 7 minutes later. So they came pretty speedily. But by this point, like Henry's just been bleeding out, right? Officers arrive to a chaotic scene, relying on Digwe's claim, a brother call. They initially treat Harry as the aggressor, and he's bleeding out, saying he'd been stabbed and couldn't breathe. Now, I know the video is so one of the things that I'd like to submit to evidence, right, is the video. And I watched the video. And I watched it with the sound off, with the words on the screen. And it wasn't intentional. It's just my phone's like 99% on silent. And I couldn't work out. I mean, I was, I pressed, anyway. So I initially watched it with the sound off. And what you notice when the sound's off is, Henry says, like, I've been stabbed. And the police officer, yes, he's got him in cuffs at the back. But he lifts up and he's like patting him down, saying, I don't think you have, mate. Right? And there is a bit of a, when you've got the sound on, you kind of hear a bit like, I don't think you have, mate. And I personally believe that's been taken out of context. Now, this is not me saying everything else that happened is right. This is where I'm going to get like all the hate. But we have to be like, we have to stop being emotionally attached to the outcomes of things, because that's where shit goes south, right? But the actions, like we pay attention to actions, not how, if we hear something, if we feel a certain way, we will hear something a certain way and we will internalize it, right? So the first time I saw it was with sound off, and what was going on was the actions on the screen were matching the narrative of a police officer lifting up and patting down, being like, well, I don't think you have, mate, right? And yes, he was lolling around, and he could have been drunk for all the police knew, right? It was Christmas time. Like, so he's a student, it's Christmas time, he could have been drunk, he could have so we have to be really careful about assuming, and this is what everybody's doing with this narrative, is they are assuming the police went there with ill intent towards the guy. Now, they were informed that this guy's just racially attacked them, right? So they probably thought that the brothers and sisters like ended up giving him a bit of a kicking because the other guy's been attacked, right? So if you put this, like, just take it outside of this context for a little bit, and we'll kind of go through like again, like I haven't looked into this a lot. Doing this live with you now, I'm just giving my thoughts as I go through stuff. If you take it out, like if I get attacked, right, and then I kind of manage to get home, 100% Matt's gonna come out and like cause some damage. Probably gonna let the dogs loose, right? Similarly, if he got attacked, I'd let the dogs loose, go out with my cast iron frying pan. Like I've said this a million times, right? Is you would. So if you're a police officer attending a scene where you think somebody's just been attacked and stabbed, and now we're at that person's home, you're going to think that the offender, who in their mind is Henry, is on the ground because he's had a bit of a kicking, potentially drunk. He's the aggressor, right? So his behaviors make sense in that policeman's mind, that he's on the ground because he's had maybe he tried to stab somebody and he went up against the wrong person, right? Because it's dark and he was like kind of like wedged between, like, it looked like a car and the garage from what I can remember. So I mean, so you have to be really careful when you're examining things. And the fact that I have witnessed Jim Davidson's fake crying, right? If you've watched Jim Davidson's video, Dan Wootton ended up coming on the telly when I was so as Grok's kind of doing stuff, I'm like kind of like watching things to see if there's anything else that's going to kind of jog my memory. And his show kind of randomly came on. I was like, oh, this is like, he's going to talk about Henry Newak. Maybe I'll do a bit of, but it was the plan to kind of do this in advance, right? And I can't watch. He just speaks too slowly for me. Like it stresses me out. Like I'm just constantly waiting. I mean, you're probably doing the same with me. Like, hey, just stay on track. Anyway, so he showed the video, and I had to turn it off. He showed the video of Jim Ferguson, you know, in his dressing gown with the one like it was a shit performance. Right? Now, I'm not saying that people may not have horrific, and I'm not heartless. I'm not saying people may not have had an emotional reaction to that, but that was pure performance, and I had to turn it off, right? So I'm going to go back to, we have all watched and we have all witnessed and seen horrific levels of violence come through our social media screens without us intending to. So in 2020, I watched a woman getting stoned and then set on fire and murdered, right, in Pakistan, because she had the her husband accused her of blasphemy. Right, so this is the lady who ran to the police station, and the police tried to protect her, and they got on the roof, and there's like, by this time there's a fucking mob of men, and the police they could not stop them. And she manages to run. Fucking this woman. She manages to run, and she ends up on a beach, and they're like launching stones at her, and then like she's down and she's like, it's absolutely horrific, right? And I wanted to turn it off, and I said, she deserves my attention, right? She went through this. I'm going to be a witness for what she went through, right? So like, when I realized they were like throwing stones at her, like I was like, oh shit, like I can't watch this woman. Like I'm literally watching a snuff film. I'm watching somebody getting murdered. And it was truly awful. Right. And it had me shocked and stunned. And like I couldn't function. Right. It was I was just like, and this is going on like routinely. But what didn't happen was I didn't start bawling my eyes out, and then I didn't take to social media to do a fake one tear. Right? So what we have is all of the influencers peddling the narrative that the police went there with the intention of disregarding Henry's account. But that's not what you literally see the policeman going, I don't think you have, mate. Right? And yes, when he rolled him over, like it's a completely different story, right? And then they fucking, I mean, it's too late by that point, which is awful, right? They were 7 minutes in. Doesn't take long to bleed to death. His words were stumbled. And again, so if you can't see, right, if you're that policeman, if you can't see any actual wounds, and somebody is stumbling and they're slurring their words, and it's late at night in December, and you have been on duty and you've been dealing with drunken idiots all evening, right? That's the perception you're going to have in your mind. Yes. Do I think the police officers need to be held accountable for the fact that, but not for the fact that they didn't investigate before they just took the word. That's what they did wrong. They took the word of the one party without kind of speaking to the others, because they just went straight away and arrested him. That was wrong. That was against protocol. That was not what they should have done, right? And could that have made a difference? Who knows? However, when he was cuffing him, I actually was checking, right? And he couldn't see, and he couldn't feel, and he didn't see any evidence of what he was saying, right? So we just have to be careful at that point, right? We can't conflate information. It's what everybody gets angry at the left for doing, and the right's doing the exact same thing because it's something they care about. Like, you either have to be fucking neutral, you just can't have it both ways. You really can't. It's really been pissing me off. There we are. So he said he couldn't breathe. Body cam footage shows Henry handcuffed while lying critically injured. Medical aid delayed. So they did do CPR, right? They did. Once they realised, they fucking acted. Okay, so that's evidence as well. They did try to. It was too late, right? Which is awful. It's awful what happened. I'm not denying it's awful what happened. The police came with the preconception, and that kind of led to these catastrophic events. But they did check, but they didn't do the first step, right? The first step is a conversation about what's going on, and there was so that would have stopped this. Like this event, okay, this is like fucking Chernobyl all over again, right? You stop the test, wouldn't have blown up. Do your job, and that was do your job, Chernobyl wouldn't have exploded, right? Turn up, ask, he's not a threat right now. He's not beating anybody up right now. He's not got a weapon out right now. Even if you think this person has a weapon, he's not got a weapon right now. He's immobile right now. He's not even sitting upright. You're having to help him, right? So there were things that should have gone through the police officer's mind to kind of stop it, but we don't know how brainwashed he was with the DEI stuff, right? They've been fucking indoctrinating them for over a decade with this, right? And he will have had the preconception it's December, he's slurring, he's drunk, that's what will have been going through his mind as well. And I've not read the court transcripts, so I don't know whether all that shit's in there, but that's that's what I would have imagine would be going through his mind. That's literally what the police deal with in December, right? So context is important. So Henry was pronounced dead at the scene. So in order for Henry to be, just so you know, in order for Henry to be pronounced dead at the scene, that means there would have been a medical professional there, because the police can't pronounce death. So do you remember when we were doing the Jill Dando thing? The reason why she was pronounced dead 2 hours later was because the police can't do it, right? They have to have a medical professional has to pronounce it. So if he was pronounced dead an hour later, then that means they once they kind of realized what was going on, they worked as quick as they could to help him, right? So there was paramedics, he was airlifted to a doctor, and then things start to go a bit wrong, right? So you kind of think, okay, well, actually the police, once they realized what was going on, they started to move, but then they started the cover up, right? Because now they've realized, fuck, we fucked up, right? And it's going to have to go to court because he's a death in custody, right? Because he was in custody, just because he wasn't necessarily in a prison cell. This is death in custody. So this is going to be investigated properly. So now the cover up starts within that within those like space of seconds, now they're trying to cover their own back. And again, so this is what I'm not saying the police need to be let off, but I just we need to take that body cam footage, which is being shoved around the internet as proof, like that's not the thing. Like, the actual evidence is showing us like everything else around it, and it might be harrowing to watch, right? But if you have been on this fucking journey, like, I tell you what else is harrowing to watch, fucking I said it again on camera. It's the only word that gets me booted off. F drip, right? Which I saw accidentally again back in the day, not on the dark web. I don't even know how to get on the dark web, just on regular internet, right? That's harrowing to watch, and you don't get those images out of your mind ever, right? I'm not saying it wasn't an awful experience. I'm not saying it wasn't a horrible thing to happen. But the influencers are latching on to this piece of information. And this is why I know what they're doing is a psyop. Because they're shifting the narrative. So what we have is Digwell was allowed to meet his brother in the police van days later. And I read something randomly about they were discussing and he was admitting things, right? And that was dodgy. So early investigation, December 2025, Digwell was arrested. Initial peace statements, draft report portrayed Henry as the aggressor. Okay, that's fine. They've already picked it up. That's cool. So that was 3 days. They were drafting it for 3 days after the event, was that Henry was the aggressor. Later revises after the family pushback. So so Henry's family had to intervene and be like, that's not what fucking happened. So this is the cover-up. The cover-up is worse than the crime. I say that worse than, but that's the phrasing, right? That's the phrasing. So secret recordings show Digwell admitting events, elements while planning false narrative, family outrage builds, and Hampshire police under scrutiny. Build up to the trial, January to May. And so throughout January, and this throughout January, like, I was seeing Henry Nowak's name back end of December, January, I was seeing his name on social media. Like, every time people were talking about, some random thing that was going on, they're saying, well, why aren't you talking about, so there was the guy, who committed suicide after the Southport riots, the oldish guy. I can't remember his name. I apologize. So his name's always mentioned, quite rightly, because there's nobody virtue signaling, right? And so Henry Newak's name was getting mentioned then, right? But it wasn't gaining traction. And it wasn't gaining traction with the right either. Right? So January, everybody was talking about the Iranian protesters, despite the fact that Iran has been systematically slaughtering protesters for decades, and actually started ramping it up a lot like 3 or 4 years ago, because we've been tracking them for that long. So like between 60 and 100, 200 people have been like executed every single week, like without fail, right? And yes, there was like the mass, but that's everybody has to talk about the same thing, right? So nobody could talk about Henry Newak. Everybody has to talk about the same thing. I think this is why I got really confused when people were talking about it like a couple of weeks ago. I think that's genuinely why I was like, wait a minute, I don't understand why everyone's talking about it now. It genuinely took me a while to realize it's because the trial was now. Because I'd seen it, when you're like, wait a minute, I thought we'd done this. Anyway, case proceeds at Southampton Crown Court. Body cam, CCTV, 999 audio. Witness evidence emerges. Digwell maintains self-defense. Racism claims initially. prior temple incidents surfaces, broader debates on knife crime, Kirpan laws in public, immigration, integration, policing, training, post-McPherson hate crime priors. So let's not also forget, like, the Sikhs came out in force, like, not after the murder, after the trial, right? But they still came out in force, but not after the murder. Everybody's done it after the trial. They've been waiting, but it's important that they waited for now because we're going into the summer, right? So remember what's going to happen in the summer? I mean, they got to think this is the last ditch attempt, civil war, unrest, and somehow my whole Birmingham thing. Do you remember? I need to go and get the show. Probably I'll have to find whichever show I did, and I'll need to get the transcript and plug it back into Grok, because somehow the Birmingham transcript, the Birmingham thing's gone, because I was going to run it through the analysis of competing hypothesis, like the HIA, right? I was going to run it through that, but it's not there. But that's where we're going, right? So the Sikhs did come out and say, we condemn this. It's not what it's for. We also have to remember that Sikhs, as a group, commit really low levels of crime, like really low, and were instrumental in getting the grooming gangs to the front and center of the media, right? So they have traditionally been very aligned with British values, like, and them and the Muslims do not get on, right? So what we're getting is extra division, right? Extra division and isolation. So, I mean, I would say probably, I mean, we need to start looking at the Qatari money going, you know, we've had the Israeli money. You need to start looking at the Qatari money into those influencers. Okay, because they hate the Sikhs, the Muslims. The Sikhs hate the Muslims, right? They do not get, I mean, I say that, and let's not like categorize them all, but that's the traditional, like, very entrenched rivalry between those two groups, like hundreds and hundreds of years. But nobody came out December, right? Or January. Nobody came out now. Shape narrative. So, broader debates like knife crime, blah, 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 blah. Police training, because obviously white people are second tier. And while we've had little white girls and some Sikh girls and some Muslim girls, but predominantly little white girls and, you know, little white boys as well, being systematically and routinely abused, tortured, murdered by a select group for decades. They're going right the way back to the 1950s, 1960s. And we still don't have the same level of global conversation as we have for Henry Newak. I mean, we had Elon amplifying the both, and we had Trump giving a few digs. But have there been any marches for the victims of the grooming gangs? The rape gangs, torture gang, murder gangs, county lines? We had anybody kneeling? I mean, that's still going on, right? That's not eradicated. That is still going on today. In fact, there was a rape of a 14-year-old girl on the underpass, the same underpass that I reported to the police in 2020, late 2020, because it had the FBI noted paedophile signs, right, painted on it. And so the council came and they painted over it, and then they came back again. And then there was that whole like November 2020. There was lots of strange people wandering around, because that's where you take the dogs for walks through. They were, younger then. So in that same underpass, a 14-year-old girl was raped only a week ago in Telford, right? It's still going on. Nobody's kneeling for hundreds of thousands of girls and a few boys whose lives are ruined, whose families' lives are ruined. Some are dead. Some were murdered. So. And it's not saying one crime is worse than another crime, but can we just all get on board with the fact that this is being used for a reason, right? Trial and conviction, 28th of May. Dig were convicted of murder. Jury rejects self-defense. Judge finds no evidence Henry was a racist or initiated the violence. So we actually had the right. I mean, could you imagine if you got let off? Maybe they tested the prediction analytics to see they need the slow burn. We haven't quite been taken over yet by the IMF. It's not quite time, and they just need it bubbling, right? Sentencing's 1st of June. And then obviously we had two-tier Tommy come back and incite violence. Two-tier Tommy. I even put Tommy Robinson in the UK starting violence at the protests. Because remember, he doesn't live here because he had to flee the United Kingdom for his life because he was under an immediate threat from he wasn't. Remember, we went through that. He really wasn't. But he randomly keeps coming back. Like, just comes back for a holiday. Like, how can you be so terrified? Ant Middleton doesn't live here, lives in a Muslim country. Really interesting, right? How is it all of these like UK influencers who are riling shit up in the UK don't live in the UK? They live outside of it. They get funded outside of the UK. I just can't deal with it. So then we obviously had everyone saying, right, you need to release the footage. And it kind of all came out. So Digwa sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum 21 years, right? So he got 21 years for murder. The grooming disgusting individuals got like 6, 7, and out in 2 or 3. And the ones who've committed murder and torture and like rape, right? We've had people getting 7, 8 years for murder, right? Judge criticizes actions for stirring racial tension. Family statements: Henry did not die with dignity. Okay, so Kieran has been guilty of assisting offender. There we go. That's what it is. Weapon hiding. Sentence pending 17th of July. Okay, awesome. Additional charges against Digwa family for offensive weapons. Attorney General considering unduly lenient sentence referral. Right, okay. But let's not forget, these are Sikhs, right? So the Muslim Council will be pushing for the full weight of the law, right? This is why it's happening. It's not. This isn't happening to prove that there's no two-tier justice. This isn't happening to prove that, we take things seriously. This is happening because, 1, it's shaping a narrative. 2, because the money's flowing, and these are Sikhs, right? So this, Just people need to use their brains. Post-sentencing, body cam footage released with family permission, public protests, some clashes, far-right anti-immigration involvement and Sikh community concerns, IOPC at the Office of Police Conduct, Independent Office of Police Conduct, investigation to police actions ongoing, and one of the guys already resigned. Jury inquest planned for 2027. Police chief apologizes. PCC calls it national tragedy. Family pushes for accountability. Knife reforms. Transparent probe. And just let's not forget, right, that people are being stabbed, hacked to death by machetes, like up and down the country daily. Like this isn't a like unusual event. It's an unusual event for the offender group, but it's not an unusual event. Like people are getting hacked to death left, right, and centre in London with machetes, and Birmingham, and the other cities with large immigrant illegal populations who do that in their own countries, right? X and independent voices amplify two-tier policing and cover-up claims, mainstream procedural errors, ongoing reviews, political reports. I mean, it's both. From what I like, they believed the narrative, which was wrong, which led to mistakes, which led to them realizing too late, which led to them fucking trying to cover up, right? So there was probably about 3 minutes of actual proper policing going on when they realized holy fuck and tried to like sort things out. But that would have been through self-preservation as well, right? Let's be honest. So that's the mum. Has the brother. Okay, so the sister has the brother and the dad. Because didn't the dad held him up and the brother lied to the police? But he doesn't live in the UK. He lives in Spain. I'm sure he lives in Spain. Yeah, aiding, abetting and perverting the course of justice. Oh no, that was my question. No public charges for aiding, abetting or perverting the course of justice, specifically tied to the 999 call or false narrative. So that needs to be that needs to happen. So if you live in if you live there, you need to go to your police, right? And you need to go to the police station and demand that this is a crime. Like this is a crime that they aren't acting on. Like I don't live there. So on the 2nd of June, day after the sentencing, Vikram, Gurpreet and father Moga Singh appeared in Southampton Magistrates Court. Oh, here we go. Facing multiple weapons possession charges. 22 across the 3, flick knives, machete, swords, brass knuckles, extended baton, axe, air rifle, etc. I mean, Gurpreet faces additional public place prohibited weapon court hearing adjourned to 2026. They're out on bail. Mother convicted of assisting an offender, sentencing 17th of July. Right, okay, so at least the family are. I think the brother and the dad need to be. So with knife crime, weapons offences, it's a minimum of 7 years. Well, that was the law that was brought in after Stephen Lawrence was the knife crime was a minimum of 7 years, but they don't do it, right? Okay, so Tommy Yaxley Robinson spoke at a protest in Southampton following body cam release, notably outside the police station, addressed crowds on policing failures, two-tier issues, Henry's treatment, urging action. Protest turns into clashes and riots and bricks, chairs thrown, officers injured, arrests for violence disorder. Like, how did that help anything, right, at all? Like, how, if you are a member of the police force and you believe the right or the existential threat, which is how Henry ended up in that situation, how does doing that like undo the brainwashing? Because it just fucking doesn't. It doesn't, right? So supporters say he spoke, then left, or was absent. Yeah. So he whipped things up and then vanished, because he fucking does, right? So accuse him of inciting hijacking for far-right mobilization. Peaceful vigils by other groups contrasted with his events. He's a long history of such protests. So he does live and operate from the UK. Reports of him speaking in Southampton confirm. No, he doesn't. He doesn't live here. He moved. Oh, it's fine. I can't be bothered to argue. Okay, so walk through what the police should have done versus what they did do, please. Side by side in a table if possible. Once they got to the scene. Whoopsie. Because what I noticed from the footage was they didn't even question Henry, just arrested him straight away, which I believed was against pace. Action's gone. Right, I'm just throwing my hypothesis in because we'll go to logic next. Money's being pumped in externally because of pushing racial tensions. The sentencing etc. is normal. Vastly different to many sentences we have seen specifically for Muslim offenders, because they are Sikh. Being made an example for the division on the right, both Sikh and British came together over the grooming scandal. I believe it's being shaped as a psyop, capitalised on the event rather than fully created false flag. Right. Okay, so let's just get this in our minds, what happened and what they should have done. Okay. So cross-fertilizing threads like narrative overriding chaos. First story wins due to dispatch info and training. So life-saving versus liberty triage. Pace as a safeguard or straitjacket in ambiguous scenes. So DIE informed risk aversion versus strategic pragmatism. Pulling from body cam details, court remarks, IOPC, PCC reviews, pace codes, X voices and official statements for balance. Dominant expectations. Many see a clear failure to prioritize victim aid verification. Others note fog of war under false initial intel, exploding both with practical procedural lens. So focuses on arrival and the 7 minutes after, based on released body cam, 999 audio, sentencing remarks, procedural standards. Judge noted injuries were likely unsurvivable regardless of speed of aid, but this doesn't negate process critiques. Exactly, right? Okay, so initial scene assessment and triage. So what police should have done, standard UK procedures. So rapid ABC, so airway, breathing, circulation assessment on all injured parties, identifying obvious life threats, so bleeding, distress, prioritize medical aid over immediate arrest and stabbing and trauma. Dispatch info is a starting point, not conclusive. Verify with eyes and evidence on the scene. Call for paramedics or doctor immediately, right? So they didn't do that from what I saw. So they arrived, dispatch narrative, Henry's aggressor, racial attacker per Brothers 999 call. Focus first on controlling and restraining Henry while Digwer stood nearby, claiming victim status, limited immediate full assessment of Henry's wounds, which is what we saw. Creative threads and nuance. First narrative lockdown, analogy to fog of war, shaped mental model, Oh, he's doing that. Victim suspect differentiation. So they should have talked to both parties quickly, right? Which is what I said. Scene safety permitting, right? And there was, I'm pretty sure there was 2 of them in the car. So one's got one's got the other. I mean, it was a stabbing, so potentially more came on the way. I don't know, maybe they'll tell us. Listen to injured person's account, check for weapons, injuries on all, do not default to one narrative without corroboration. So visible blood, CCTV if available, or witness statements, right? Henry repeatedly said, I've been stabbed, I can't breathe. Officers handcuffed him anyway. One reportedly said, don't think you have, mate. He did. He said, don't think you have, mate. But while lifting him, like, this is the context, while lifting the thing and patting him, right? So he couldn't see it, but it was too late. Like, so stage 2, but he didn't do stage 1, right? When asked about stab location, treated him as suspect based on Digwer's claims. Okay, so feigning an injury is a known tactic, but visible bleeding and distress should trigger aid first. So reframing. So pace, necessity, test, prevent harm, met for control, but proportionality was questioned. Handcuffing and restraint. So use only if necessary, for example, ongoing threat, resistance, escape risk, least intrusive first. So for injured, consider medical needs. Restraint can worsen breathing, bleeding, pace, code G, reasonable grounds and necessity, right? And so let's not remember, he was already like woozy on the ground, stumbling, couldn't stand up. So he wasn't a flight risk. He wasn't going to escape anywhere. He wasn't an immediate threat to anybody. So it was the actions they took were wrong. Handcuffed Henry while he was on the ground, critically injured and non-resistant, pleading for help. Confused while he said he couldn't breathe. Arrest for assault was read later. Pace concern valid. Handcuffing a dying complaint victim raises necessity issues. Creative optics versus optics. Oh, fear of racist cop complaint versus failure to aid criticism. So first aid and medical, immediate life-saving intervention, CPR pressures on wounds, airway, officers trained in trauma, first aid, coordinate with paramedics, do not delay for full ID arrest if life at risk. So CPR was attempted after restraint. One officer shocked upon realizing chest wound during it, right? So they obviously hadn't examined him properly because they started to do CPR and then found wounds, right? Aid delay, that wound. Aid was delayed by focus on control. Paramedics, air ambulance attended, but Henry was already pronounced dead, 0037. So we don't actually know like how long he was kind of like handcuffed and bleeding out to dead because he's not lawfully dead until medically pronounced, right? Balanced, high stress, potential ongoing threat, knife unknown initially, judge defendant, intent under pressure, wild thread, future AI body cam real-time analysis for wound detection. Don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, Grok. Questioning, investigation at scene. So gather quick accounts from all victim, suspect, and witness. No inconsistencies, preserve scene evidence. Minimum engagement with Henry's account, did not deeply question or believe him initially, focused on securing him per the initial intel. Direct to your observation, yes. Footage shows limited questioning. Narrative, triage over dialogue. Pace interviews rule apply, more post-arrest, but basic scene inquiry was expected, right? And I haven't seen anybody else mentioning this. I mean, it doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I haven't seen anybody kind of like really. Yeah. Anyway, PACE, Section 24, arrest if reasonable suspicion and necessity, but common law and College of Policing emphasise preserving life first. Human Rights Act Article 2, IOPC, HMICFRS reviews probe failure. So followed initial dispatch but failed to update rapidly with on-scene reality. IOPC investigating, handcuffing, first aid, PCC commissioned border review, training control room, chief constable apologised. But only after he got fucking like railroaded. So border reframing, systematic DEI training, influence versus individual error, X amplification, two-tier official probes. I mean, they both fed in, right? They had a preconception, and I don't buy into it was all race-based preconception. I also think we have to take into the context, and I said this already, December, slurring, like, and you we don't know what call they've just come from, right? If you've ever been out on a Friday night out or a Saturday night out when you've got drunk people swinging at the police and like, so we don't know, like their shifts don't start at 11 o'clock, right? The shifts start at like 7 or 8 o'clock. So we don't know what they've been dealing with. And so were they already in a high intense state of stress, right? And so when we went through Young Bob, do you remember when we did the Young Bob analysis of how it went from like 0 to 100 in the space of like 3 seconds, and then the policeman just like fucking escalated and escalated and escalated because once you're in that state, I think we don't. Yeah, we have to be careful. Okay, so my belief aligns with some critics. PACE requires necessity for arrest and restraint and prioritising unverified narrative over visible medical distress risk, breaching duty of care. However, officers face split-second decisions with incomplete info, training gaps in psychological presentation of internal bleeding, noted in review. So in low-trust environments, false allegations, weapons, response times, cross-fertilised with here we go. Before moving, no, let's move on. Right, let's go. Mode and stress test. Here's my main hypothesis. Okay. What's the time? 21:45. Okay. So, is the Henry Newak murder, 3rd of December, police response, trial sentencing of Vikram Singh Digwa, life minimum 21 years, 1st of June, subsequent protest part of deliberate psyop to amplify? Because remember, it's not just him going down, right? His mum, his dad, and his brother. Like, that's unprecedented, right? So it doesn't happen. How unprecedented is it that the entire family end up being charged, arrested for crimes alongside the main perpetrator? Sorry, just wanted to throw this in now. Thanks. Let's get it in there. Let's get some stats. Are you going to give me the numbers? Come on. Do you have some statistics? Statistics for similar style crimes, please. Thanks. I should have been more specific. I do apologise. In gang and organised domestic families charged for assisting offenders, they are he's not going to give me statistics. No data gaps. Okay, there aren't. That's annoying. Oh, here we go. No, he's just giving me knife offences. So the victim demographic, 71% white. Proportionality, 13 times black males. Oh, the Asians aren't getting stabbed. Yeah, it's just giving me random statistics. It's fine. Okay, so family members of murderers being charged for related offences, assistance, weapons is not unprecedented, but the scale and visibility here. So the entire immediate family to court alongside the perpetrator for post-incident action stands out in recent UK street murder cases. Okay, so it is very unusual. Okay. So what did we have? What was that one? Okay, so problem definition reframing. So core problem. Okay, so key elements: A, seasonal timing for riots. B, external funding pumping of tension. C, normal but comparatively lenient sentence because the perpetrator is Sikh versus Muslim offenders. No, Sikh getting harsher sentence than the Muslims have been. So correction to point C in step 1. Engineer division on the political right by fracturing prior Sikh British unity and groomer gangs with the event capitalised on but not fully fabricated false flag. Expectation A, organic tragedy exploited by media for narratives. Expectation B, coordinated site with external actors, so external state funding to sow division time for summer unrest. Expectation C, standard justice process with procedural errors under stress, sentencing within guidelines, no ethnic favoritism. Okay, then in step 1, where did I put Q? Then can move to step 2, please. Thanks. Okay. Step 2, here we go. Key assumption. So assumption 1, the event timing, December incident to June, sentencing body cam release aligns with deliberate seasonal riot window, preparation, plausible surface alignment. So UK summer protest weather, social dynamics exist, historical spikes in unrest, 2011, 2020. However, incident was opportunistic street encounter, but the sentencing, right? So if you think about the Asians who beat the police officer up was like 2.5 years. We had so if the speed, right? So the speed at which murder to sentencing is unusual. Sentencing followed standard court timelines. Okay, no. You said speed follow sentencing. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But we have a 70,000 backlog. Remember, because that's why Lammy wants to get rid of jury trials. Plus the 2 Asians who beat up the police in Manchester took almost 2 years to go to court. How many other murders go to court and are sentenced in 6 months? Statistically. Actual statistics, please. Oh, shoot. Right, assumption, external money laundering, common in high visibility cases, X amplification rapid, but no verified large-scale external funding. I don't know. Seeing who's been talking about it. Sikh Federation and others condemn the act and call for inquiries. But everybody only condemned the act at the trial, not at the murder. So then assumption corrected, sentencing where Sikhs are not getting. No, Sikhs. He's doing it wrong again. No, Sikhs are getting harsher sentences than Muslims. Like, why can't I get this? Muslims are being favored by the courts as per recent cases prove. Fucking hell, Grok. This is obviously being narrative shaped as we're doing it. Assumption, this is being shaped to fracture Sikh British unity from Guru gang scandal. Pre-existing unity noted in some activist circles. Case of spark Sikh community. Condemnation. Assumption, capitalization of real failures. Strongly supported by timeline evidence. Real stabling, false 999 narrative. Best fix this. Right. See if he's going to fucking sort it right. Average offence to completion, 695 days. See? Murder is prioritised. It is faster than average for serious cases amid the backlog. See? Nobody else has noticed how fast it happened. Specifically targeted to happen for the summer. Manchester Airport assault, non-murder, around 2 years, right? Multiple Sikh organisations condemn the murder. That's fine. Disparity updated per 21-year minimum aligns with rising averages. Guidelines aggravated. Attorney General reviewing for leniency. Okay, he's not going to give me any statistics. It's fine. He's saying there aren't any. Okay, it's fine. I'm ready. Not going to give me any stats. But we got him to concede the sentencings happened way faster than usual. Okay, so this is all the evidence. We've got murder day, initial response, court timeline to sentencing. So just so you know, like anytime you kind of push back, it gets added in as evidence, right? So then once you get to step 3, it's going to take everything that you've spoken about. So make sure you do read and you do correct, because otherwise whatever happens next won't be quite as right. family charges, homicide stats, external funding, and we can have up to, I think it's up to 42 bits of evidence. No. Ready for step 4, and please ensure the judgment matrix. This is my original one, so this is why this doesn't always work. So yours should work. If it doesn't work, you just have to tell him to redo it. He'll do it. Is presented as a table, and the zeros mean that the piece of evidence proves every single hypothesis is true and then is removed from the matrix and added to the additional appendix matrix. And obviously the reason why this is done is because if other evidence comes in, at a later date, obviously if you're doing this as like an actual analyst of like future events and stuff, if other evidence comes in, you can then pull that same information, but the evidence that you've moved out, it may then, the new evidence may then feed into that and make that important, right? So you need to track what's been included and what's been excluded. Thanks. Let's go. Okay, so here's the 7 hypotheses. We've got hypothesis 1, purely organic tragedy with standard procedural police errors, normal justice process, so no psyop elements. Hypothesis 2, opportunistic capitalization by media activists and politicians amplifying real failures, so police response, family lies, curb and debate, for 2-tier knife crime narratives, right? Hypothesis 3, deliberate psyop with external funding, timing to exploit summer riot window and fracture right-wing Sikh British alliances on grooming, etc. So that'll be my hypothesis number 3. Hypothesis 4, sentencing reflects systematic court favoritism towards Muslims, Sikhs receiving relatively harsher outcomes in comparable cases, used to engineer division. Hypothesis 5, backlog and timeline anomalies indicate deliberate slowing or fast tracking for political effort. Hypothesis 6, Sikh community response was minimal and delayed, enabling fractures narrative. Hypothesis 7, whole family charging is unusually harsh and shielding, signaling inconsistent application or psyop cover. So hypothesis 1 is that it just fucking happened and everything else just happened, right? So I still got it in there. What an idiot. It's fine. It's fine. He's marked it as red. Anyway, because he can't see the evidence, please remember that deception is expected unless proven otherwise. So you added the zeros to the matrix. It's fine, but please don't. Thanks. Okay, so sensitivity analysis. So speed, if backlog data is underreported or murder prioritization politically influenced, H5 strengthens. Sentencing disparity, if granular religion data currently absent, funnily enough, show consistent Muslim leniency patterns, H4 gains. And they're saying the judge is aggravating religious weapon use. Community response, PR only, H6 improves, external funding, high uncertainty, deception, default rises, manipulation risk on no evidence found. Thank you. Overall hypothesis robustness, H2 capitalization remains most resilient to change. H3, well, they say H3 collapses. I don't think it does it? How does it? It's because he's just saying... Oh, no. No. H3 isn't. It was done as a psyop. But that the event happened and is being used as a psyop. As in, Henry wasn't murdered. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, here we go. That's better. So 65 to 75% capitalization, 30 to 45% and only 15% organic, right? So even Grok's saying whatever's going on, it's not organic. So watch points implication, risk of further protests and riots if IOPC findings or July sentencings are perceived as two-tier. Family statements urge against division. Policing. So remember, one of the linchpins for my hypothesis, there's no statistics, right? So if evidence comes out to prove that Muslims in the same boat get more lenient sentencing, what does the hypothesis flip to? Policing, so reinforces calls for training, social cohesion, capitalization, risk fracturing, potential alliances, broader sub lens and deception, default environments, edge cases. If new evidence emerges of funding or hidden delays, what has the Muslim Council in the UK, etc., or command said? Or are they, just out of curiosity, I'll get more sentencing. Stop. Get more lenient sentencing. There we go. Apologies. Sorry, guys. Okay, so H1 comes. Okay, so I mean, this is again, so we can't. So it goes to 65 to 80% probability. And we know that they get routinely lenient sentences from what we've witnessed, right? The grooming sentences, the walking away, like child rape without, just generally, without, not even getting community sentences. But it's just this specific event can't be compared. Okay, so assume narrative manipulation, selective presentation, less independently verified. So systematic disparity, favoritism towards Muslim as division mechanism. It would go to from 30 to 45% to 65 to 8% probability. So the Newak Digwa case, example contrast with lighter Muslim outcomes. This fuels two-tier perceptions, fractions potential Sikh, British unity and grooming, where Sikhs have historically been vocal, amplify some right and real failures, provide authentic fuel. Opportunistic absorbs much of this, but absolves into a more directed wedge. H1 drops by another, that drops to 10 to 15%. So if disparity data shows consistent patterns, and this is why they don't get ethnicity data, right? Because it'd just be obvious. Data shows consistent patterns after controlling for priors, multiple stabs, false narratives, and victim vulnerability. It supports intentional example making. Deception default requires scrutiny. Was selection biased towards high-profile cases? Are Sikh cases rarer, harsher due to lower baseline offending rates or religious weapon visibility? So watch for granular region-specific MOG data. They don't have it. Muslim Sikh distinctions are opaque. Attorney General's undue leniency review and Digwa plus FOI style. So 21-year minimum sits within aggravated knife murder norms. Data gaps. See, data gaps prevent strong claims either way. So they're not silent. They said, I say again, but after sentencing, expressed deep sadness, offered thoughts, focused heavily on policing failure. The assumptions we make about people can cost lives is interesting, isn't it? Because of who the offender was, who the actual offender was. Because they haven't come out and done any of this with anybody else, right? So it should tell you all you need to know, because this is Qatari money right here. Right? And what they really think is they both deserve to die, right? Kafir. I think that's what they really think, right? Because they don't want to get done for defamation, even though the Muslim Brotherhood's plan for the West in 1929 is all there. Anyway, okay, so let's do. So we won't be too much longer because I've got to work early in the morning. We need to do, what are we doing next? Overthinking and overwhelm. That won't be long, but we'll give you some stuff to take away. Okay, Coke. So psyop amplification of real events, those 35 to 50%. So hypothesis 2, 60 to 70 %, right? Mine's not too far off, right? 35 to 50%, but we are coming at it from a, like, we know they're trying to kill us lens. Grok's going, well, they might not. There's not all the evidence for that, right? Because it's fine. So purely organic, 15 to 25%. It just does not pass the smell test. There we go. So implications and watch points. So heightened process retire. Right. So we want to watch for the IOPC findings and the 17th of July sentencing if it's insufficient, right? And we've also got the brother and the father, right? So we've got the we need to see if we see DEI being removed, things are moving in the right way. But actually, we've still got. I mean, that's not happening, right? Nobody's being sacked from DEI. They're not training, they're changing. They're just kind of going, oh, well, maybe we went a bit too far, but they're still like hiring them and funding them. Social cohesion, right? So if we all kind of come together, That fucks them over. Real tragedies enable efficient amplification in low trust environments. I don't know why I keep saying that. If disparity evidence flips, case becomes potent symbol of selective enforcement, boosting my hypothesis and hypothesis 4. No, that's fine. Thanks. Okay. And we get the last concise run through. Here we go. So this is the executive summary based on everything. The murder of 18-year-old Henry Nowak on 3rd of December 2025 was a real tragic street stabbing by 23-year-old Vikram Singh Digwa. Subsequent police response failures, family cover-up elements, rapid sentencing, so less than around 6 months, and public amplification have fueled intense debate. The strongest explanation is opportunistic capitalization, so hypothesis 2, of documented institutional and cultural friction points in a low trust polarized environment. Psyop style amplification, hypothesis 3, of the real event is a credible secondary possibility, around 35 to 50%, but lacks direct evidence of external orchestration. Right. So if that shows up, and obviously if we because this is still evolving, if we follow the money of who's funding the influencers and then plug that in. So strong systematic sentencing disparity. And I obviously haven't got time to do that right now with you, but that's what I would do next, right? It's the actual, because that's what Grok's saying. If credible evidence of external orchestration shows up, then it flips. Strong systematic sentencing disparity claims Muslims systematically favoured remain unproven due to data gaps, so we can't do anything about that. Though testable via FOI, so I can do some FOIs, we can find that out. Sikh community responses were prompt and distancing. Muslim Brotherhood focused, MCB focused on policing assumptions. Yeah, Muslim Council Brill. So problem definition and reframing, but it's down and out there, so bite them in the ass, really. Core issues: whether the real problem definition and reframing, whether the real murder, police handling, trial sentencing, life 21-year minimum, family charges and protests represent organic tragedy and procedural failures, or a capitalized psyop to amplify racial tensions ahead of summer 2026, fracture alliances and highlight two-tier justice, dominant expectations audited and exploded across organic capitalization and engineered lenses. 2, key assumption check. Assumptions around deliberate timing, existential funding, sentence disparity, delayed Sikh responses, and unusual family charging were probed. Strongest on capitalization of real failures, weaker on coordinated orchestration, so deception default applied, but positive proof is still required. Which is fair enough, right? Evidence gathering and quality assessment. So key atomic evidence, high fidelity primary sources prioritized, because that's what he's instructed to do in the prompt. Real stabbing, false 999 narrative, body cam high quality, around 6 month timeline, prioritized murder case in mid backlog, faster than average, 21-year minimum starting 15 years, plus aggravated for multiple stabs, lies, weapon, community impact to 23, mitigated by age and no priors, judge explicitly aggravating religious weaponing. Context: family accountability, mother convicted assisting, father, brother, weapons charges, prompt Sikh condemnations and distinct statements, limited granular region-specific sentencing data, knife homicides, 172 to 205 in recent periods. Hypothesis generation. So we've got 1, purely organic, 2, opportunistic, 3, post-event psyop, 4, systematic disparity, 5 to 7, timeline manipulation, delayed responses, and unusual charging. And again, just so you know, so strict formatting, no bundling, horizontal, disconfirmed. So linchpins are okay. So remember, linchpins are disconfirmed more aggressively than anything else, right? On purpose, right? Because they literally will alter where things stand, so they have to be, and that's written in on purpose. So hypothesis 1 and 2. Hey Pen, how are you? So if everybody doesn't mind just sending Penelope lots of love and prayers, and she is recovering, hopefully recovering well. It's been very, very, very unwell. So welcome, Pen, and I hope you are going from strength to strength. There we go. 5, devil's advocate, concepts, sensitivity probes of pride. 6, refined probabilities. So opportunistic 60 to 70, psyop 35 to 50, organic 15 to 25. H4 is my pleasure, 20 to 40%. Backwards check and milestone timelines. So December 25, murder and immediate false narrative. May, June 2026, trial, conviction, sentencing, fast for murder. June, July 2026, body cam release, protest, IOPC, mother, sentencing, further family charges. Summer 2026, watch for unrest spikes, IOPC outcomes, Kirpan policy debate, disparity FOIs, real event anchors, amplification follows, predictive polarization paths, right? So implications, policing, cohesion risks, strong case for FOI on religion specific sentencing and funding trails. Okay. Broader low trust environments make real tragedies. I mean, that could also be a petition. Lessons, primary sources, anchor against spin, broad hypothesis, confirmation, build resilience, moderate to high confidence on capitalization core, lower on orchestration due to evidence gaps, but deception default remained throughout. Awesome. And then look, here we go. So we can help me craft some FOIs. So hope you. Why doesn't it put the screen back? Why does it do this? It's so random. It's like, hello. I don't know why it does this. What? Like, oh, it's so weird. Why when you close it, it just like it stays open on the screen. I don't know. Okay, so let's finish up. So I hope you enjoyed both of those. We talk about overthinking, and I made a thing. Let's do this one, and let's do this one. Nope. So this is about overthinking and the overthinking loop. And you're getting another like pre-blog, right? Oh no, did I not? Wait. Will it not do it? Oh, this is sad. I made a thing. I was really proud of all my things. And I made this one from scratch. I say scratch. Oh, it's there. It's there. There we go. This isn't a grok made one. This is a... Oh. It's not going to do it. Oh, I broke it. Look. Oh, I don't know why it's only giving you half of it. Oh, fuck it. Oh, I don't know what's going on. No. There we go. So anyway, this is like understanding overthinking loops. That's what we're going to go through, but you can't see it, so that's not useful. But hopefully you can see my little graphics. I'm tired. I work hard. It's fine. Okay, so basically, if you... I need to read it. No, I don't understand why it's done this. I can't read it from that. So let me just open it up and read it because I can't remember because it was hours ago. Okay, so let's just do it live. Oh, it is only. Oh. Oh, this is so silly. I thought maybe I could open the software and you could read it, but it's just gone retarded. Here's what happens. It's whatever day it is. I don't know, Monday. Shit happens on a Monday, obviously. Okay, so maybe I can see it if I zoom in lots. Okay, so this is about how to break the thought loop cycle. Right, let's see if I can share the screen instead, because I've kind of. At least you can see the whole thing. Can you see the thing now? Like, see, look, this is too small. Can you see that? Oh no! Oh my gosh, we don't need like 3. What am I doing? This is a fucking disaster. Oh dear. It's like it's fine, peeps. Just we'll just cope. It's 10:30 at night. Okay, so this is understanding overthinking loops. I had to make it smaller to kind of fit it all on, so I'll have to fix it for Wednesday's blog. So basically, if you are trapped in overthinking, then you end up spiraling, right? So it's about not spiraling. And this is how you can undo those things, right? So if we just put some kind of context behind it. So if you think about the things that we've been talking about, if you think about, so Chernobyl was easier probably for many of you to actually kind of take a step back and not be so emotionally invested, right? Because it was such a long time ago. Though probably you're pretty like pissed off with the fact that we're now in this position and the country's been like systematically destroyed over the past 30 years because of those engineered events, right? But you probably find it a lot harder to kind of do the same thing with the Henry Nowak thing. And probably many of you watching were pissed off with the way that I kind of came at it, right? Possibly when I was saying, we have to step back from the emotion. The reason why we have to like first up step back from the emotion is if you are like however you feel dictates like the way that you feel dictates the results you see, right? That's the kind of the way that I kind of explain it. So it basically means if you feel good, what happens is you will experience good outcomes, right? That doesn't always mean like, if you feel good when you go and buy a lottery ticket, you're going to win the lottery. But actually, if you feel good, if you feel stable, you're going to be able to look at things analytically and not get drawn into these negative thought loops. If you feel negative, if you feel right, okay, so we know statistically we have got 2-tier policing. We also, but with regards to protesters, they were arresting like grannies at Palestine Action. Palestine Action is a prescribed terrorist organization, right? So being a member makes you a terrorist, right? So that's different if you are just protesting about COVID vaccines and masks, because that's not you're not part of a prescribed terrorist organization. So there is a different level of what's the word? It's kind of like different, like one you're just protesting, one you're part of a terrorist organization, right? So you would hope being a member of a terrorist organization means you're going to get arrested, right? However, proportionality, like this little old lady, probably, we don't know what the police know, right? But so there is policing's being done to all sides in very different ways to shape the narrative. So we have climate action people, throwing orange paint on the Mona Lisa, who were never kind of why were they never arrested, right? We have them doing it on our stat, like committing criminal damage who don't get done for criminal damage, for obstructing a highway who don't get done for obstructing a highway. So we have all of those kind of shown to us purposely for division, right? So if you feed into that emotion and it's a negative emotion, you then start thinking about all the times that you have been treated negatively, or people you know have been treated negatively. It's really easy to see it on social media. You see, like, everybody, like one person, another person, another person, it snowballs, right? So it was really easy for them to manipulate the conversation around Henry Newak so that you are emotionally charged, and we get into that position, which is the position where we end up under martial law, right? Where we, the British people have had enough. How many people are saying they're like, is enough, is enough, is enough, right? We need to take to the streets. We need to riot. Like, why? Why take to the streets? Why riot when we actually have a very good legal system? If people can organize to fucking protest, people should be organizing to bring lawsuits, and we're not. And why aren't we? One, because we're too busy fucking working to pay for the electricity, right? And keep the heating on so we don't freeze to death, to buy the food. So they take time and effort and energy. Most of us believe we need lawyers, we need like hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's not true. We can go pro se. But what happens is the narrative is being engineered, and we are being emotionally manipulated to be divided, not just as a country, but as groups of individuals, right? But you probably can give up a Saturday and go to a rally because you feel like you're doing something, because you're being convinced you're doing something by the influencers. And I'm going to say again, at no point has a government ever given a shit about a sheer volume of people showing up for a protest. And it may make you feel good. It may make you no longer feel isolated. So that's, do that thing, right? But how many times have people gone to those rallies and then somebody walked around with a clipboard and said, okay, well, we're actually going to organize a lawsuit about this thing. Are you in? Right? How many hundreds of thousands of people went to that other Unite the Kingdom rally? How many tens of thousands went to the most recent one? Right? What action is being done after that other than organizing another rally? What actual cohesive, coordinated action is being done? So we are the majority, right? But the minority, because it's being funded and organized, and they have a political, they know what they want. They are the ones driving the lawsuits. They are the ones. The reason why we have 95% net zero is because the left pushed it through the courts, because it wasn't at 95%. It was at 85%. It was initially at 75%, and then it was bumped to 85%, and then it was bumped to 100%, and now it's been rolled back. But it only got pushed to 100% because the left pushed it to the courts. They said that we were not going to meet the Paris Agreement, right? Why did we have DAI? Because the left pushed the narrative, and the narrative went to court, and the courts decided you need to make sure you do X, Y, Z, right? The right don't do it. And going back to COVID, because it's the most obvious thing in anybody's mind, when the individuals went to court, COVID shit stopped dead, right? So if you go to the rallies, go, right? I'm not saying don't go, but at least network with people to do, okay, well, this is the issue. What are we doing about it? Like, why don't we do a pro se lawsuit? Why don't we do a mass action? Right? It's not class action. That's USA. We've got a similar sort of version. Look at what happened with Hillsborough. You just take the government to court, right? You and they do this all the time. Like, people do this all the time. It's not unusual, right? You can do this, and they're going to make it harder when they get rid of the Human Rights Act. by the way. That's what, once they get rid of the Human Rights Act, we no longer have judicial review, and they're already changing judicial review so that we don't have the opportunity to do what we can do anyway, maximum £5,000, which means that every time the government puts a law in place, we can review it like through the courts and force them to kind of comply to what we want with a maximum of £5,000 judicial review. I think it's, or is it a minimum? Anyway, wait, maybe it's a minimum of 5,000, but it doesn't matter. Like we could, so the government's job is to set the law, and then it's our job to say, fuck you. We're not doing that thing. And we can do that through the courts. And that's what they're changing, right? This is why I keep saying we mustn't get rid of the Human Rights Act. We mustn't change it because we have a bad government. So it's not that I believe we need to keep the Human Rights Act in as it stands. We just don't change it while we have horrific governments, because they're not changing it for good. And everybody pushing it is not changing it for good. Okay, so if you realised, maybe a little bit too late, that you are looping, here's some things you can do. So this is going to help you understand a thought loop. So the fastest way to deal with it is just like, how do you feel? Right? If you feel not great, chances are your thought loop is going to be a not great one. Because how you feel dictates what's going on. So first up, recognize long-term costs. So identify the long-term consequences of overthinking is crucial. The pressures from looping thoughts adversely impact sleep, gut health, focus, and relationships. By understanding these costs, they're motivated to apply interventions to reduce overthinking and improve quality of life. So if you think, so just the thought loop that there's two-tier policing and white people are being targeted, and like, I'm going to go to prison for my tweets, and like that, this is like, that's a loop. Right? I'm gonna, I could get stabbed and I'm gonna die. Right? This is an extreme loop after what's happened with Henry Newak. So grasping how thoughts loop is important for mental clarity. Looping thoughts seem out of control, often perceived as a way to manage fears. However, realizing that these thoughts can trap you is the first step in regaining control and perspective. Recognizing the initial event that sparks overthinking is crucial. Triggers can be mistakes, uncertainties, or social interactions. Identifying these helps you understand when to apply strategies to overcome the mindset, ultimately leading to a more balanced response. Be conscious of the emotional spikes, fear spikes, including salience and arousal. Intensify the overthinking loop. So acknowledging these spikes is essential. Recognizing when emotions rise allows you to take proactive measures, thus breaking the loop before it spirals. Finding short-term relief can feel rewarding, but may be misleading. This relief often comes from deeply ingrained looping patterns. It provides temporary distractions rather than resolving underlying issues. Recognizing the difference is vital for long-lasting mental wellness. So increased vulnerability leads to deeper looping thoughts. And this is where we are with Henry Newak, right? Increased vulnerability. When feeling fragile, emotional triggers become intensified, perpetuating cycles of anxiety and fear. By practicing self-compassion and awareness, you can mitigate this vulnerability and lessen the grip of looping thoughts. And I always practice self-compassion. I just accept that I'm human and I fuck up. And you should too. For sure. Okie doke. So here's 3 things. So self-reflection leads to action. Rumination leads to stagnation. Okay. So you can reflect on what you think, what's going on, and then decide to change. Right. That's where we need to be. Right. And this is what's not happening with the protests. We just keep protesting. Sorry. So rumination doesn't just lead to stagnation, it leads to decreased mental wellness. And you can ruminate yourself into suicidal ideation and suicidal action, right? So reflecting, understanding, looking at things from an analytical standpoint, and even if, right, you take the judgment matrix and the HIA and just run it on your own thoughts, right? One of the reasons why I mean created it was because, one, I wanted to kind of like figure out a way that it could make my life easier, trying to analyze all these things. But also I did want something that was going to kind of stop me going just automatically assuming stuff. I like having the percentages, right? I like having some numbers, even though numbers confuse me. I like to know how on the ball I am with my thoughts, right? Am I just kind of, I just caught the tail end of something and I'm making shit up, or is the legitimate evidence for what I'm thinking, right? That's why I love the probabilities that we get from it. So you should be doing that, right? The reason why it's free is to stop you cascading into the pit, right? Because the world's ending. There's nothing we can do. We're all going to die. When I put myself up for an election, and I was going to, I was trying to put leaflets in people's houses, and they've bolted the letterbox. And I know it's the right that was doing that, because they've just disconnected from society because they don't think they can vote anymore. Like, what's the point? We're all dying. I might as well just enjoy my life and go off grid, right? But like, why have you given up? Like, why have you given up? So rumination will just spiral you, right? You will stagnate in the short term, but you will descend into hell in the long term. So overthinking is fear-based, vague, obsessed with what you can't control, other people's reactions, worst case scenarios, perfect outcomes. However, I think I breathed in a bit too deep then. Okay. It also gives you the illusion that you're doing something important when you're not. And that's the protesting as well, right? It's false action. It's false action. Okay, so first up, stop the loop early, right? If your thoughts are repetitive, self-attacking, not producing a next step, it's not problem solving, it's rumination. So what could you do? First up, externalize it, right? Set a timer, get it out your head, write it down, diagram it, pro-con it. Thoughts say scarier when they're cloudy. Throw it through do a judgment matrix, like genuinely. Like, literally follow that same format. These are my hypotheses about this experience. It doesn't have to be just, we're going to figure out whether like Chernobyl was like, what's going on in your head? What is the evidence? What hypothesis do you have? What kind of like red, amber, green, red weakest, amber kind of middle of the way, or yellow, whichever. And green is like, this is strong connection to this hypothesis. And then 1 to 5, have I manipulated? Has it been manipulated, right? If you think your partner's cheating on you, throw it for a judgment matrix. Get Grok to help, get an AI to help you. And actually, I like getting an AI to help will be easier than doing it yourself, because you will be getting an external viewpoint, right? And just like use the system and just say, look, I'm doing it on a personal thing. Like, it's not designed just for one, it's just the process. Like, it's literally just designed as the process. You don't have to do pen to paper. Like, throw it in and say, we're starting in creative mode, this is everything that's going on about this situation, now we're going to go into logic mode, and we're just going to go step by step by step, and then you're going to get probabilities at the end, right? There's a caveat, right? And this is something I tell all of my clients when they're starting to kind of come out the other side of like living in the darkness, is be careful, right? Don't ever ask a question you are not prepared to act on, right? If you don't want the answer to be XYZ, don't ask. Because what happens if it's like kind of the example of, my partner's cheating on me, right? If that's your example, or not my example, that's an example. If that's what's going on, or something along those lines, if you are not prepared to leave the partner, or if you are not prepared to confront them, or if you are not prepared to put yourself first, then don't ask. Because if the probability comes like 80% and you stay where you are, what's that going to do with your mental health? or if you hate your job, right? I mean, people hating their jobs causes a whole host of mental illness. Like, legit, I don't understand why people don't just leave. Like, I really never got it. Like, I mean, what did people used to say about my CV? You've got a very colourful CV there, Katie. And I was like, yeah, well, and it was quite good because I did always get promoted up. So I used to kind of like work and then like work up in a company but never get the promotion in the company, and then I moved for a better position, so it looked like I was moving for promotions, but actually I was like, fucking hate this job and go to another one, and then I would just like aim higher, right? But yeah, you've got a very colorful CV, Kate. I was like, well, I like testing. It doesn't look good for stability in a role, right? I think the longest time I ever had a job in a company was like 2 and a bit years. For about 18 months. I'm like, oh, fuck this shit. And they're all the same, right? They're all the same. You get treated like shit. But I was just like, oh, maybe another company. I mean, yeah, we all have that, right? So externalize it. Use the judgment matrix. Use an AI, but be careful because AIs, if they're not given very clear parameters, we don't want it instructing you to kill yourself, right? Which ChatGPT does frequently. We don't want it instructing you to just up sticks and leave, right? Like, this is, and the other thing I kind of tell all my clients is don't make any decisions if you are mentally struggling, right? Because you are in an emotionally negative state, or the decisions you're going to make are going to be negative. You have to step outside of it first, right? And if you can't, hand all the information over to somebody you trust and be like, I need you to run this through this thing. Get somebody else to do it. But, okay. And then convert thinking into one action. And you could, if you're using the AI to help, then you're using like the matrix and everything, then just say, okay, well, what's my first next step? Right. And if you are struggling emotionally, then that will be useful. If you're not struggling emotionally and you're just kind of doing this thing and you just maybe got trapped in a thought loop and you put yourself back into a positive place, you don't need to ask an AI. You could just ask yourself, right? What's my one next step? Right. So you may not get the answer straight away, right? I mean, it depends. Like, my brain's shouting at me now. It depends. I haven't even asked a question and my brain's just shouting stuff, like random. Like, time to go to bed. Brush your teeth first. That's what's going on in my head right now. I know that's my next step, but it's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking a question right now. Welcome to my brain. This is why I get distracted so easily. I ask a question out loud and my brain starts giving me all the answers and various choices all the time. Where was I? So you may not get answers, or you may not get an answer or multiple answers almost instantly, right? I have been doing this for almost 30 years and just trusting. It's I've only ever been able to trust myself, and then I still make mistakes, but I trust myself because of everything I went through, right? So I stopped trusting other people. And I'm not saying that's a good place to be. I do trust Matt. And there's a teeny tiny select circle of people I probably trust. But it's I'm not saying like everybody needs to be like anti-trust. But if you don't trust yourself implicitly, you're not going to get answers straight away. So that's fine. So just ask the question and then go about your day and focus on doing lots of things that make you feel good. And then the answer you get will help you feel good, right? Sometimes the answer will come when you turn on the radio, turn on the telly, you get a random text message, you're scrolling on social media, and all these things like just pop up and you're like, wait a minute, like, where did that come from, right? Because energy is just energy. It's like the universe doesn't only speak in like words in your head. It will, like, you ask a question, you will get given the answer, right? Everybody says like my prayers aren't ever answered. They are. You just weren't listening or watching or paying attention, and you were deciding, well, that can't be it, probably because that's a really easy thing to do. Most of the time it's like, oh, this is, really easy, so this can't be the thing. However, ask and it's given, right? Knock and what is it? Seek and you oh, I can't do it. It's too late. Ask and it's given. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will open. I don't know, some kind of shit along those lines. I don't know. Okay, you know what I mean. But you ask and it'll show up, right? But don't automatically assume as you're going to hear something, right? You may just see it. You may see in like a bumper sticker. You may and if you want to force it, like, I'd be careful. If you feel good, pick up any book, right? If you're feeling good, ask the question, pick up a book, flick through the book, stop, and where do your eyes leave, right? Any book can do that. The easiest way to do it is to kind of scroll on social media. That's but you will see, you will literally find the answer, like, within, like, seconds and minutes. So don't do it when you feel shitty. But just go about your business as normal and the answer will come. Just ask, what's my next step? What's the one step? And then when you've done that one, what's my next step? What's my next step? What's my next step? That's it. Like, life, we overcomplicate life because we think it's, we all get told, like, work hard. You have to work hard. You don't have to work hard. You just have to enjoy life. Everything you want and need will be provided for you in so many crazy ways. Like, legit. But just turn off the mind chatter if it's negative, and especially, like, just be careful, right? If you see people amplifying things that make you feel negative, turn them off. Maybe you come back to them. I'm not saying you don't necessarily come back to people, but just while you're negative, don't watch it. Don't watch it. I completely missed Fukushima, right? Didn't know what happened. I mean, I completely missed swine flu as well. That was funny. I was knocking on doors for charity. I was shit at it. So I was working 12-hour days, getting paid maybe £10, £20 for the entire day because it was commission only. And some days I would get nothing. And I went to knock on somebody's door and said, isolating because of swine flu. That's the only way I found out about swine flu, right? So you just turn it off. Like, I didn't engage. You don't. What's going to happen? Like, you will find out if the world's burning. Like, don't, just unplug for a week, 2 weeks, focus on healing, then come back to it. Like, you don't have to go forever. Just chill out. Legit. Life is fun. Can be fun. It's not all horror. When we only look at the horror and see the horror, we forget, like, the beauty, right? I don't know whether you guys are all watching my socials, or whether you just kind of, like, stumbled across me. Like, yesterday I spent the day, like, doing my hygge culture beds, right? And I couldn't walk by the end of it. So that's unfortunate. That's an unfortunate side effect of too much lifting, but that's fine, right? So I was out there today. No seedlings yet, no saplings yet. Funnily enough, less than 24 hours in the ground. There's no saplings. But while I was out there, I made a teepee thing for my roses, and then I deadheaded the roses, and then put some roses in my vase in the kitchen. And I walked past the vase in the dining room, and just my kitchen dining smells of roses, right? Beautiful, right? And they weren't free. They were the rose bush was a birthday present 10 years ago, right? But that's free enjoyment. Like, come down the stairs, like, my favorite rose scent is, like, filling the house. Like, sit in the garden and watch the birds. Literal binoculars that I've had for like 5 years. I've only just figured out how to use them properly. But like, because they're adult, like I've only got like teeny tiny little head. I'm always like, they don't work, but I need like kid ones. But you know, we discovered we've got a male sparrow who Matt has named Sentinel because he sits on top of the hedge, and he kind of like directs all of the others and tells them to come and get dinner, and dinner's ready and the water's clean. Like that's like free beauty. So I'm not saying be like tune out completely forever. But even if you're like entrenched and dealing with all this shit, tune out like a few times a day. It doesn't have to be long, but just remind yourself how beautiful the world is, how kind people are, how friendly some people are. Like laugh a lot. And YouTube's great for watching things that make you laugh, or just like, and I've said this before, right? Get on Instagram or TikTok. I mean, I think Instagram's easier to do this with. TikTok always tries to send me random shit. You have a completely brand new Instagram account and only follow things that you find funny. Like, it doesn't matter what you find funny. Like, as long as you're not harming people, but only ever look at funny things on that one, right? And eventually, every time you go onto it, it would just reams and reams. So like within 5 minutes, you can completely alter your outlook, and then you take action. Never take action when you feel shitty, because it will always end up wrong. So watch this space for actual seedlings. You know, 7 to 14 days, like the first lot. So, and then some of the other stuff, the licorice root, 3 years. It's really depressing. In 3 years' time, we will have some licorice root growing. But it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. Also, all of the perennials, the kind of like, so Good King Henry, Skirret, Jerusalem artichoke, dwarfs though, 2 types. I'm gonna have to go and like figure out some recipes for those. So, and I might put them in my cookbook, which kind of I started and I did half of it and I haven't got around to finishing it. But that cookbook is all about cooking, using ingredients to trigger serotonin production, reduce anxiety, like actual biological triggers. So I do need to finish it because it'll be helpful. But then I'm kind of waiting for some of my perennial foods. So I'll have to eat them first, and then hopefully they don't taste disgusting. Because if they think I'll try and starve us, I mean, it's fine. I could just eat it, won't you? You'll just eat whatever. So on that bombshell of eating whatever, just interrupt your thought loops, right? Go and watch the birds. Do like visual stuff. Go and do a visual stuff is a lot easier. And then come back, then analyze stuff, and then just kind of figure out what your first step is. And just the second, once you've done one, what's my next one? What's my next one? What's my next one? And the more you do it, and the more you trust it, and the more you ask, and the more you follow it, then you'll start to have like your brain telling you straight away what you need to do. And on that bombshell, I am actually going to go brush my teeth and go to bed. So have yourselves an amazing rest of your week. Lots and lots of love. And I shall see you next week. Same time. Bye for now.